Are we on?
You're on.
Yeah, there we go. All right, at 6:31, calling to order the November 24, 2020 meeting of the Southborough Board of Selectmen. All members are present. There are 4 other boards that have posted meetings for 6:30 that are going to be joining us, as well as other potential participants. So what I'm going to ask is that if they are in our waiting room, if the respective chairs of planning, EDC, SHOPC, and trails can be brought over, call their meetings to order, and then I will read the governor's intro to cover all of us.
So, Mr. Chairman, at this point, you've got the chair of EDC, planning, SHOPC, and Miss Barrett, who are here. And then you've got a couple of members of planning and EDC, but I don't think you have quorums yet.
No.
Okay, well, while we're waiting for that, then I'll flip the order and I'll read to cover all of the boards who may or may not have quorums this evening, which include the 4 that I mentioned earlier. And Katie, if you could get ready to, and even start bringing people over while I'm doing this. Fair enough? I can't see you, but I'm assuming you're nodding. So pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Southborough Board of Selectmen, as well as and including the Southborough Planning Board, EDC, SHOPC, and Trails, with the possibility that other boards may also participate, will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting at www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording transcript or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. So with that, and I believe Mr. Morris, Ms. Jasinski, Ms. Barrett have been brought over.
Excuse me, Marty, can we bring Julie Conley over, John, as vice chair? If and when they have a quorum, she'll be calling them to order.
Yeah, in fact, absolutely. And Katie, to the extent possible, I would just bring over everybody who is in the waiting room, particularly from planning, EDC, and otherwise. They're all going to be active participants in the meeting. Don, I can see that you're unmuted. How are you?
Good, thank you. Marty, thanks for having us. Thanks for letting
Dorianne?
us join.
Dorianne, hello. Nice to see you. Well, I haven't seen you yet, but
Here.
yeah, are you not going live so we don't get to see your artwork tonight, or?
I'm actually up at our ski house in New Hampshire, and I'm stuck in the bedroom because Larry's on a board meeting with the Alzheimer's board he's on. And then I've got 2 puppies, 2 cats, and other people. So I'm hiding in the bedroom.
Okay.
No artwork tonight, sorry.
Katie, have we brought over everybody who was in the waiting room? Hi, Ms. Barrett.
You're muted, Katie.
Sorry. I don't usually talk. So Julie Connolly has to be promoted to a panelist because she has an older version of Zoom. So I'm going to do that, and then we should have everybody.
Okay. And I'll try to keep an eye out to the extent you can keep an eye out as well for others. And as people join, if we can bring them over. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Marty.
And Don, Dorian, Julie, we've called our meeting to order. I read the intro from the governor. It doesn't look like anybody, I don't think, has a quorum yet. But if you need to interrupt and if you get to a quorum and actually call your meeting to order, just interrupt and do so. Okay?
Marty, I believe Mimi just joined, so planning should have a quorum.
So Marty,
Yep.
planning board is now in session.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Don.
John Wood's here, Marty?
Okay, that does not.
No, I can't see who's here, so I don't know if I have a quorum or not.
It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4. Is 4 a quorum for us? We need 5 for a quorum.
Dorian, I
Yeah.
think currently you just have Chelsea and yourself.
Okay, Jesse's not here, then planning board either. Okay.
Okay. All right. With that, the first item on our agenda is public comment, independent of presumably the extensive public comment from all of us that we're going to hear. I don't see any hands raised for individuals to public comment. So we can go to our next item, which is scheduled appointments. Discussion and review of the latest VMUD draft and comments for the downtown initiative. And Ms. Connolly, Ms. Barrett, and Ms. Braccio have been deeply involved in working to get us here tonight. And Ms. Braccio is going to take over the discussion at this point. Am I right, Lisa?
Yes,
Before we
thank you.
start, I'm sorry, I just want to interrupt because we only need 4 for quorum. So I think we have 4. Suzanne.
All right, just call your meeting to order then.
Okay, all right, so our meeting is now in session for the EDC.
Okay.
Awesome. Great.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you. Sorry, Marty.
No. Just I am signing off and putting on mute.
All right.
It's
Thank
all
you.
yours.
Thank you. So thank you everyone for coming again to the joint meeting. Thank you for Judy for being here with us tonight. How we're anticipating the meeting going is breaking it into 3 phases. The first phase will be for Judy to provide some clarity and to get direction on some policy based on comments that was received through the matrix. The 7 priority areas we'll be touching on under this phase will be 1, the floor area ratio, 2, the height, 3, multifamily, 4, affordability, 5, green space, 6, sidewalks and walkability, and 7, by right. As we go through each of those items, all boards and committees, and we'll have an opportunity to comment on those. The second, we're going to just continue the discussion based on the comment matrix and things that were not addressed in phase 1. And the third part, if we have time, hopefully, is going to be questions for Judy that weren't answered maybe in the matrix, or you're looking for clarification from some of the comments Judy provided in the matrix, or just new questions and comments, and just open discussion on anything we may not have covered prior. So that's kind of the agenda for how we're going to move forward. So Judy, again, welcome. Thank you for being with us tonight. So if we want to start with the floor area ratio, if you want to speak a little bit to that based on the comments you received and the clarity you're looking for, and then we can open it up to comments. You're muted, sorry.
Would think for the number of these meetings that I do now that I should get it, that I need to unmute myself. I apologize. I think we're going to need some direction from you folks about where you want this metric to be. Maybe I should just explain a little bit about the difference between what a floor area ratio is and what a maximum square foot requirement is for use. So floor area ratio controls the overall size of the building in relation to the lot. Regardless of what the uses are in the building, The FAR says this is the maximum amount of floor space that you can build on this lot. The concept of square foot requirement per use is if I have a retail store that is 1,500 square feet or 2,000 square feet or whatever, you know, assuming you accept my 3,000 square feet, which is the way it's drafted right now, then I can do that as of right in a building that may have more than one use in it, provided that the overall building does not exceed that floor area ratio of 0.35. Where did 0.35 come from? It's kind of standard for a commercial district. You know, Sam, I know you had commented on taking it up. It can be taken up. I think I just need some direction about how far you guys want to go on that FAR metric. But I want to just explain their different ideas. One is about really how big an establishment can be in a building. And typically that gets regulated for retail and often for restaurant. And the concept is you're trying to keep the retail establishments in a village center small service establishments. I won't use the term mom and pop because that's kind of silly, but small establishments, you know, kind of service oriented local shops. And you could have, you know, in a building that's at that 0.35 FAR, if it's on a 20,000 square foot lot, you could have a couple of retail stores that are up to 3,000 square feet. So one is about the scale of the use itself, and the other is about the size of the building. I hope that's clear.
Yes.
The advantage to the FAR is that it's a more elegant standard for getting at the impact of a building than maximum square feet across the board. So if you have a 10,000 square foot lot or a 20,000 square foot lot, the impact of a 2,000 square foot retail store is going to be very different. So an across the board threshold for what triggers a special permit without regard to anything else about the project really, I think, kind of misses the point. The point is how much development on a lot becomes too much in a small village center like this. That's a different question from the uses themselves. So they work well together, but I think what you want is one, to be able to say, these are really the kinds of stores we're looking for. We're not looking for CVS, we're looking for small shops. That's where that 3,000 square foot metric comes from. The other is how big should a building be overall? How much mass, how much bulk should a building be in this town center? And that's a function of the entire structure, not the individual uses within it.
Judy, I have a follow-up question on that. So that the FAR is for the entire floor area, including on multiple levels, right? So
it's gross floor area.
So if there was a 10,000 square foot lot and it was a 1-story building, the size of the building will be limited to 3,500 square feet. If it was 2 stories, it'd be limited to 1,700 square feet per floor, right? And if it was 3 stories, it'd actually be, you know, less than 1,200 square feet per floor. So then it starts getting pretty small vis-a-vis the size of the actual lot.
You're trying to control the impact of the project on its environment. So, you know, that's the concept, is just what's the bulk of development that's allowed on one of these lots. And, you know, you can certainly take it higher. I work in plenty of towns that have an FAR that goes higher than 0.35 in a town center district. And I'd be more than happy to write it that way. But I'm juggling here what I think is competing ideas that we have heard from the very beginning of this project. Some people want development and what it can bring in terms of opportunities. Some people don't want change. So, you know, I'd be more than happy to take the FAR up, but I need direction from you folks about what you want. So
Judy, I think
we're not feeling conflicted anymore, because I feel like we've got a lot of conflicting sentiments back, which doesn't surprise me. But at some point, somebody's got to make a decision and say, Judy, this is what we want. Because
Okay.
I got one more draft in me and that's it.
Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll open it up, we'll switch back and forth. So I'll start with planning board on this one. I'll start with EDC as we go to the height next. And just if there's members that would like to ask Judy questions or give additional feedback. So Mr. Morris, Chairman Morris, I will start with you. If you have anything to add or questions, comments.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Yeah, when we did the village business districts 25 years ago, that was part of the discussion. Hi, Judy. And since then, so as far as I'm concerned, the 0.35 is fine. I wouldn't raise it any higher than the 0.4. And then if that's all we do, I'm okay with that. The suggestions to increase from 3,000 to 4,000 or 5,000 to me is way too big for the downtown. We can't have it both ways. I understand that, the more, the bigger the building, the more retail, the more commercial you're going to attract. But those are enormous buildings for downtown. So that's one of the areas that I really feel, and I know that over time we've discussed this in the ZAC and so on, that those numbers are just way too big for downtown. That's my input for this segment.
Okay, thank you. Judy, do you want to just take note? Do you have anything you want to respond to that with?
Just to make the comment that if I have a 20,000 square foot lot with a FAR of 0.35, I can build more than 3,000 square feet.
Right. But not 5,000.
Well, you can do the math. I mean, at some point you might get a 5,000 square foot building depending on the size of the lot. It all depends on the size of the lot. The size of the lot multiplied by the FAR determines the maximum floor space you can get. Now, the reality is that somebody still has to meet the parking requirements, still have to meet the setback requirements, there's all this other stuff that comes to play. So they may or may not be able to max out the FAR, but I just want to make it clear, it's all a function of the size of the lot. That's the whole concept of an FAR. That the number can change depending on the size of the property.
Yeah, and I like that approach rather than just a size, a square footage for the district. I also want to, I probably should have pointed this out. For those who may not know the steps, and I think I know them. Judy will give us a final draft, and then the planning board, because this is zoning, planning board will open and will advertise and open a public hearing. And it's during that public hearing that we would, get all kinds of comments. And for our last zoning articles, we kept the public hearing open for months. We just continued it so that it would be available. People would be available to comment right up to and very close to the town meeting as things change. So regardless of which way we go with this tonight, there'll be a final draft. And I assume that regardless of, there should be more people that are in favor of the final draft at this point than not. And then if that's the case, it'll be handed over to the planning board, turned into a language for a zoning article, and then open the public hearing. And it could be during that public hearing that things change. That's the purpose of the public hearing.
And Don, if I could just add, so I think the goal is optimistically that we can all get in a good page tonight, so we could move forward with the final draft. And again, we're reserving that. I mean, obviously that would be the end goal of the meeting tonight. But I don't think anybody particularly me, is set in stone. We want to do this and we want to do it right. We want something that benefits the town, that almost, the majority of us can agree on, that we bring forward to town meeting, something that has the ability to pass. So I think we're kind of open on that. I know Judy will be doing the final draft, and whether it's based on the final results of this meeting tonight or potentially in another meeting, we're kind of open to that. We obviously want the best that we can supply for the town, because this will live for generations. And so I just will add that on to your comment.
We'll never get it perfect.
Nope.
So, and we have to understand that. And as we go through this process, we shouldn't get hung up. We should identify those areas where there's, polar differences between certain things that we're talking about, and just identify those and carry those into the public hearing, and let the public hearing process focus on those areas where there's a lot of disagreement. And maybe we can refine those down to, a small number of areas of disagreement, and then
Okay,
keep moving it forward.
absolutely. Thank you, Don. Was that it for that comment?
Yeah, for now, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Thank
Thank you. Ms. Houlihan, I will move to you next.
Thanks. I fully support. I just want to make sure I can do the math correctly. So Judy, what you're saying, if it's a 20,000 square foot lot and we use a 0.35 FAR, we have a 7,000, multiply that, right? 20 times 0.35, that's 7,000 square feet that we can develop.
That would be the maximum you could develop.
Okay, I'm completely game. I appreciate the support and I support this.
Great, thank you. Ms. Luttrell.
Thank you. I'm also in support of the 0.35, but I don't think I would be in support going any higher than that, the 0.40. And also the 3,000 square feet for retail, I think is plenty. When you go 4,000, 5,000, that's huge, and no small retail establishment needs to be that big. And I have a question for Judy. When I was looking at downtown zoning in other towns, a lot of them do like maximum lot coverage instead of FAR. What's the difference or the benefit of FAR over maximum lot coverage?
Well, the thing there's benefits to both, Mimi. I think the FAR regulates the bulk of the building. It basically says you're not going to get a building over a certain size. So if the concern is about, massing and how a structure kind of fits in with what's around it, FAR is a nice way to go. A coverage limit depends on what kind of coverage limit. There's two types. One regulates the building coverage, so it's just what can the maximum footprint be. The other type of coverage limit is an impervious coverage limit. So it controls the total amount of impervious cover on the lot. Building footprint, parking, whatever. That is typically a good tool for thinking about, stormwater or, just how much hardscape do you want to have? The building footprint is really about, it's sort of another way to think about FAR. If you think of it this way, if you have a building footprint of some percent and you can build up to 3 stories, you've effectively got an FAR. Do you follow what I'm saying? I can only build so much square feet on the ground floor. I can go up 3 stories. That's going to give me some amount of square feet that I can develop. You can easily convert that to an FAR. So they're just kind of 2 different ways of thinking about the overall bulk of the building. Some communities also have an open space ratio, which is different from a coverage ratio. Coverage ratio is getting at how much of the lot can you cover. An open space ratio is about how much of the lot has to be available for landscaping, for pedestrian amenities, for whatever. There's different kinds of ratios. They all have value.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Mimi, did you have anything else?
Okay, thank you, Judy. So what we're looking for, it seems like the FAR is the tool that would best accomplish what we're looking for.
Well, I think so. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
that's it.
So I did add a landscape open space ratio here because I heard the comments about, oh, we're supposed to get more open space in this. So, you know, I kind of tried to address that. So I think between the FAR on the building and the open space ratio, you've kind of got probably the best of both worlds. You've got a way to regulate the overall bulk of the building, but you're also guaranteed a certain amount of the lot for not building, for not parking. Do you see what I mean? So that was the approach I took, and also tried to regulate where it goes. I mean, one of the things that sometimes happens with an open space or a landscape open space ratio is that the developer will try to figure out where to stick the open space so that it has the least regulating or limiting impact on the project. Well, you want the open space, or at least a big chunk of it, in front of the building. So we're saying you got to have at least 20% of the lot as an open space or landscaped open space set aside. I want to make sure everybody understands. This is about landscaped area, not conservation restricted land. So you get 20% that's in landscaped open space, and at least half of that has to be toward the front of the lot, so that the public gets the benefit of that design feature.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Julie, how about we'll go to you next. Thank you.
Yeah, this all makes great sense. I'm not sure I have a really strong opinion on 0.35 versus 0.4 or some other number, mostly because I'm still trying to wrap my brain around what that looks like. I think the only reason I'd leave it open for not set it in stone tonight possibly is I'd like to, and to the extent you're prepared to answer this, Judy, that's great. If you're not, I understand. What other similar towns, and I know you said 0.35 is sort of a normal thing. Sometimes they go higher in more downtown areas, but I'd be curious as to see, you know, some of the other towns that we compare ourselves with, what theirs are and what that looks like. Because my only concern is, and I know we're going to have a discussion about the height as well, but as drafted, it's 40 feet, which is, you know, like 3 to probably 3 stories, with the potential for potentially a 4th. And again, that's, you know, just as the current draft is. So thinking about it that way, if you think about a 10,000 square foot parcel, you know, that would be really in a 3-foot building. I agree that 3,000 square feet is a lot for, you know, is a decent size, you know, more than a decent size, small, you know, local retail type shop or restaurant. However, if we're really going for this mixed use, and if we're really serious about wanting to add a housing component as well, then all of a sudden it's less than 1,200 square feet. And that's not enough, I don't think. And again, I need to kind of wrap my brain around it more. That's not a very large space if you want to have, you know, maybe that's a small coffee shop, but barely. Again, I don't know for sure, but just from my, you know, eyeballing it, that seems like a pretty small space. So that's the only reason I'd want to kind of do a little bit more research on that maybe and see if maybe just putting it up to the 0.4 gives us a little more leeway, because at some point, if we really do want the housing piece of it, the mixed use component, we're going to need a little bit of height, especially if we want to make it a viable project for somebody to want to build. In that case, all of a sudden our footprint gets pretty small.
So bear in mind that not every potential use in a district works on every single site.
Right.
And that's something I think to bear in mind. I mean, I'm not advocating here for whole scale redevelopment, but if people have an economic motivation to do something, they'll assemble 2 small lots. Now you get other public benefits like curb cut management and so forth. So, you know, they've all got trade-offs, but, you know, again, I leave it to you guys. Somebody make a decision and let me know.
Well, okay,
Oh,
I
did you have
mean,
more,
The
Julie?
reason I can't answer your question easily is that everybody does. There's so many ways to do this. I mean, there are towns that have far less regulation than you guys do. I'm trying to actually work within a fairly tightly controlled regulatory environment in Southborough, but you know, a lot of towns just have a building height and a parking requirement and setbacks, and that's it. And I mean, I'm not going to write that for Southborough, but you're going to find that kind of zoning out there. Just is what it is.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Julie, was that it for that piece?
I think so. I was trying to Google real quick what the 2 Main Street lot size was, just for as a basis for comparison, if anyone happens to know off the top of their head.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at those one night. I don't remember right now. I don't have
Yeah,
that. stuff open.
I used to know. If I can get it, just so we have I'm just trying to visualize it, I think.
4698.
46.
4,698.
For the pizza place?
No, for where the two, I'm sorry, so two East Main, the empty, the vacant lot.
Oh, 19,765.
19, so that's almost, okay. So that's so that's 20,000 for all intents and purposes, right? For easier math. So I'm just trying to play out my scenario there. If there were a 3-story building with an FAR so that'd be, okay. So it would be just over 2,000 square feet per floor on a 3-story building. Okay,
and they still have to provide parking and they still have to do everything else. And so, you know, often what happens with these FARs is that by the time you pack on all the other stuff people have to do, they sometimes have trouble even getting to the FAR. But just bear in mind, there's more to it than just, I want to put a building up and it's going to be 0.35 FAR.
Yeah,
Especially if I have an odd shaped lot or something, complying with the parking requirements becomes harder.
So on that lot, I guess the difference between a 0.35 and a 0.4 FAR would be about.
Excuse me, Julie, can we just not talk specific lots?
Okay.
I'm
just trying to visualize it because it's
Yeah.
I understand, but sure, fair.
Sorry,
Yep, that's fine.
Did you have anything else on that?
No.
Okay, great. Suzanne, Ms. Duca? Do you have a comment or thought?
I don't know if she's promoted to panelist. I saw her as attendee. I think not everyone's been promoted to panelist, so you probably have to promote her.
She's unmuted. Suzanne, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes.
I think I more or less agree with Julie. I don't feel strongly one way or the other. I'm fine with 0.35, but I think exploring just to make sure we're providing the flexibility for growth in the future is kind of important. So I'm kind of good with everything that we've been discussing tonight, but I don't feel strongly one way or the other at this point.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next, Mr. Healy.
Judy, thanks for your explanation. And let me just, this is one of my first forays into the zoning world, but it sounds to me like the balance you're trying to strike with the numbers, the 0.35 and the like, is to allow economic activity, but to limit the size of that economic activity. And again, the balance is to sort of look at what Southborough has in its downtown area now, what you've gleaned from the various comments, what it wants to continue to have in its downtown area, and try to come up with the formula that strikes that balance. Is that an accurate statement of how you came up with?
That's what I'm trying to do.
Okay. All right. So that being said, that makes sense to me. And you're comfortable, with a lot more zoning expertise than I have, but you're comfortable that given what you've heard about the balance that we, as residents and board and committee holders in Southborough have expressed to you, that those numbers are, again, don't perfectly accomplish it, but they in your view best accomplish what we are trying to sort of create with a revised zoning article. Is that a fair statement?
I would prefer to make that FAR higher.
Okay.
I am trying to respond to the mix of opinions I have heard.
Okay. Well, let me ask you. You
I
said
don't think it's, oh God, I'm sorry, Marty. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. And I'm just wondering, you know, so let's tease that out a little bit. The 0.35 is what is in print right now. One of the suggestions was up to 0.4. I mean, obviously there are ratios in between 0.35 and 0.4. You know, how much of a difference would it be if, for instance, if you split that difference and your ratio was what would that be? 0.375.
Mhm.
You know, and I guess my question to Mr. Morris, Ms. Luttrell, Ms. Houlihan is, because I heard 0.4 pushes the envelope a little bit too far. You know, is there a compromise number somewhere between that? And again, I just split the difference. And I guess first to you, Ms. Barrett, would splitting that difference, would going to 0.375 make much of a difference? And would it push more towards accomplishing some of the flexibility that some other folks have talked about?
I don't think it makes enough difference.
Okay.
I think you really have to make like there's this fundamental policy decision here.
Okay, well, what number would make that significant difference in your view?
Is everybody going to shoot the messenger?
Well, no, I mean, this is just informational. This is not, you're advocating it. As you said, we're the ones who ultimately have to make the decision, but I'm curious as to how far you have to push that envelope to make the sort of difference that you're suggesting would have to be made.
I would allow it to go up to 0.4 as of right and give the planning board the option to grant a special permit to exceed it up to 0.50. Subject to conditions.
Okay, I having heard that, I'd be curious as to the reaction by some folks in the planning board who've already spoken. But I appreciate that. That's sort of what I was trying to tease out, and that's very helpful to understand just how much you have to push to make a difference. Thanks.
Thank you, Marty. I think you asked the question, and Judy's thrown the number out there, so it might be worthwhile, and I know other members are waiting to speak. It might be just worthwhile to briefly hear from planning board and to answer that question before we move on. So, Mr. Morris, do you have a response to from 0.35 to 0.50 with a special permit from 0.40?
I'm in favor of keeping it at 0.35. That's my preference. And then special permit up to 0.4.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Ms. Houlihan.
I'm in favor of keeping 0.35, and I'd be up for a special permit beyond that. So maybe to Judy's 0.5. So I'd be willing to kind of expand that.
Okay. Ms. Luttrell.
I agree with my colleagues, 0.35 and a special permit over that.
Over that to up to 0.5 or to 0.4? Just curious. Mr. Morris said 0.4, so I'm just curious.
I guess up to 0.5. Because
I think in terms of a 10,000 square foot lot.
Okay. And I'm going to go back to Mr. Healy.
Yeah, I'm having heard, because Ms. Barrett said 0.35, 0.4, special to 0.5 is what was just described by members of the planning board. Is that a reasonable compromise with the 0.35 as the baseline, but with the ability of our elected planning board to push it up to 0.5? Is that somewhat of an elegant compromise to accomplish both things that you've been talking about?
Mr. Morse.
No, this is for Ms. Barrett.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
I think you want to make the bump up under a special permit significant enough that it's worth someone's while to go through that process. Bear in mind that as soon as you make somebody go apply for a special permit, you're into a discretionary world and your risk of appeal is greater. So if you're going to make somebody go for a special permit to get greater economic opportunity, I think that 0.35 to 0.40 just doesn't do it. Again, think in terms of a 10,000 square foot lot. This is the easiest way to do it. I can get 3,500 square feet. Am I going to go for a special permit to get 500 more square feet? To go from 0.35 to 0.40? I mean, I'm not a developer, but I wouldn't do that. I'm like, no way. What do I get for 500 square feet? Nothing. I don't get a housing unit. I don't get anything. So why would I bother?
Okay, I'm good. I think I think I get it. So I appreciate understanding the landscape a lot better now, if that's the right word to use.
Marty, can I just add one thing?
Talk to Lisa.
Sorry, Lisa.
No, that's fine. Just briefly, Julie, just so I can get all the other members of the board as well.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I just Marika actually just added a comment to the chat. I just want to make sure everyone saw it. And it says that by comparison in the ZAC, the downtown proposed zoning had a FAR of 0.75, which seems like a really big difference from 0.35. So
it is. We all know what happened to the ZAC, right?
That didn't make it. Yeah.
No,
I know. So I'm not going back to that.
No, I know it's like a dirty word. I hate to even bring it up, but
Thank you.
But I'm not proposing I'm not proposing that, but it just seems like a big different world of discrepancy. That's double. So what we're even talking about. So I'm I'm all for compromise, but I just want to make sure that that's surprising to me that it was that much higher than what we're talking about here. So I'd be curious before we make any decision to just see what other downtowns have that are similar to ours.
Okay. Okay. Great. Thanks, Julie. Ms. Malinowski.
I don't think I have any other questions outside of what others had asked. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shea.
I also don't have additional questions, but it's been very helpful discussion so far.
Do you have any comments? I should have asked Ms. Malinowski the same thing on the 0.35 versus the 0.50 as far as some type of consensus?
You know, quite honestly, I would defer to planning board's recommendation on this matter. And I tend to agree with set it at 0.35 with an allowance for a special permit to go higher.
Okay.
And that
Great.
higher amount, I'm not really clear on myself right now, but
Okay.
That's
Thank
where
you,
I stand
Brian.
on that. Thank you.
Because that's a baseline. I'm sorry, Ms. Malinowski, I'm going to go back to you because I didn't ask you that question as well.
I think it makes sense to have the 0.35 be by right and then have some special permitting that would have to go through planning board. I mean, I think what I heard Judy say was that even on a 20,000 square foot lot, depending on all the other regulations with parking and open space and how the lot is set up, you may not even hit the 0.35. So I think, I don't know that we're talking about every parcel could hit a special permit. So we're probably talking about a few. So probably does make sense if the planning board agrees to have some flexibility with the special.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stivers.
Thank you. I guess I had made several comments in the comment matrix about expanding the limits in a variety of ways. But the objective behind that, Judy, is to get something that actually gets built. And as you commented previously, we've got a lot of conflicting objectives. We could come up with a structure that has so many limitations on it that no developer is actually going to want to build anything here. So I was looking for ways to wind up with something that would be attractive to a developer to invest some real money in the downtown. And I guess one of the hopes that I had was that maybe you could suggest some things out of your experiences, seeing places that do get built and don't get built. What can we do to encourage investment in this? And for example, is the floor area ratio something, I mean, should we consider going to 0.6 or 0.7? To get people to do more investment and maybe limit the lot coverage as well as that, so people could build higher but smaller and have smaller units in a building that wasn't quite as big a coverage in terms of the lot. I don't know the answer to that, but I'd be eager for any suggestions that you could make around that. And I'd be willing to, again, defer to the planning board, give the planning board more flexibility on some of these things to get projects that we actually want and that seem to fit the character that we're looking for, without on the front end constraining the developers. I'd make a quick comment about the special permits. I agree that nobody's going to take on a special permit lightly. On the other hand, the presumption in zoning law is that a special permit should be granted unless there's a clear reason not to. If you need a variance for something, the presumption is that the variance should not be granted unless you can prove that it should be. So typically, at least our zoning board has been, I think, historically pretty generous in terms of special permits, and maybe the planning board would be the same way as well. I don't know. But that to me is not as big a hurdle as finding something that developers will actually see as an economic opportunity for them to make some money on the deal. And I don't have a good feel myself. And maybe somebody like Suzanne, for example, who's in the real estate business, could have some insights for us about what is it that motivates developers to invest in these kind of projects. Is it height? Is it the number of units you can put in? Is it the square footage per unit? Is it the type of unit housing sells and retail doesn't, or vice versa? I'd be real curious to know what people have seen on the ground over the last 5 years or so in other places that actually works, and then try to find things along those lines that we can include here. So thank you.
Thank you, Sam. So Judy, I also am fine with the 0.35 and with the special permit from the planning board. It's just, what is the threshold that
The upper
triggers
thre-
this?
The upper threshold.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
So,
I agree with Sam that, the presumption in the law is that if you meet the requirements of the special permit, it should be granted, but it's a may, it's not a shall. And I would think that you would want some kind of trade-off to grant that special permit. I don't want to try to make this up off the top of my head, but I think my experience from what I see working for town boards and hearing developers is that predictability is one of the most important things to a developer, because my whole ability to end up with a project that I could make money on if I sold it tomorrow, relative to what I put into it to build it, that's got to get to a certain number or I'm not going to bother. And the more permutations there are in the process that might upset my assumptions in that thinking, takes longer to get approval than I think. The longer it takes the approval, what does that do in terms of my ability to start construction, to start marketing? The more uncertainty you build into the permitting process, the greater the disincentive. So although certainly the ability to build a certain amount of space matters, of course it does. I think that that the town has got to deal with what does the special permit do for you that zoning with standards doesn't do.
So that would argue that the more by right ability in here, the more attractive it is. Or you might think about putting time limits on the special permit. Special permit's got to be granted within 60 days or something like that, or it's granted by default. Those kind of constraints.
The town council would have a problem with that.
I think planning board might as well.
I think the town council would have a problem with that, because the special permit, the statute, in many ways, the statute is sort of like, these are things you can't do, right? Because we're a home rule state. So there are things that the zoning statute says you can't do. The zoning statute also lays out procedures, and there's not a whole lot of wiggle room for changing those procedures locally. Site plan review is entirely a creature of home rule. and you can write whatever darn rules you want. But when it comes to a special permit, I am not aware under Mass General laws how you could tie the planning board's hands that way. I certainly think with site plan review you can. Got 60 days to act on it. You don't act on it, it's constructively approved. I mean, what kind of zoning exists?
I'm not suggesting that's a desirable thing, but that is one of the ways to get to a developer in terms of being motivated to actually make the investment and get a project in the ground here. So there may be other ways. I'm open to other suggestions as well.
Okay. So Judy, I think at this point, as Mr. Morris said, if we can come to some form of consensus with, everyone we have on here now on what the number is up to, I think that can start the draft, and, it can be adjusted based on public comment.
Sure.
That's my suggestion. So maybe the next question is to quickly go around and everybody give a thought process, starting with planning board on what you think that number is. I know Mr. Morris said 0.4, Ms. Luttrell said 0.5. So, maybe we just do one pass and we try to find a consensus. So, we can at least move this item forward. Mr. Morris.
John, you're on mute.
0.35 by right. 0.5 is fine with me. If I remember right, when we got in the ZAC meetings, that might have been the night that we were discussing that limit beyond 0.5 was probably one of the meetings where we had more violence than the other ones.
Are you talking about me, Don?
I didn't say anything, Sam.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Morris. Ms. Luttrell, I'll just let you reinforce your point that you had made.
I'm in agreement with
Okay.
Mr.
Ms. Houlihan?
Morris and Ms. Houlihan.
Great. Thank you. Ms.
Agree.
Houlihan?
It's Marnie.
Okay, Marnie, thank you. Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Okay.
Same numbers.
Okay. Ms. Malinowski?
I'm good with those numbers.
Okay. Mr. Shea?
Same numbers and looking to keep it peaceful.
Okay. Mr. Stivers?
I'll raise the average up to 0.6 by special permit.
That's not in the consensus, Sam. So I do see, before we move on from this, that Mr. Dennington is in the attendees. I don't know, Andrew, if you would like to comment on this before we move on, you're certainly welcome to.
I don't have any comment.
Okay, great. Thank you. So also I see if there's any members of the public before we move on from this. I know public will have comment as we go through the process, but I see Mr. McKay is here. I don't know. Dave, if you have just a comment on this.
I don't have any comments. I just logged in, but I appreciate you calling on me. It's not you.
All right, thank you.
Pleasure to see you.
You too. Thank you so much. So Judy, I think that gives you the direction on this item. That's
helpful. Thank you.
Okay. And actually, I apologize. I didn't go back to Julie. I'm sorry. Julie, and we'll start with you and then Suzanne.
Sure. I'm also in favor of raising the cap a little bit. And again, I feel like I'm not equipped to answer because I feel like I want to do a little bit more research, because I think I was in line with everybody else until I saw that that piece of information that the ZAC had planned on a 0.75 FAR. And I know that the ZAC didn't pass, but from what I've heard, the downtown district was not why it didn't pass. And I also just quickly Googled Hamilton, Massachusetts, which is a very small town with a very small downtown center that's similar to ours. And they also have a 0.75 FAR. So it just makes me want to do a little bit more research into what other towns are doing, because that just seems like a really wide gap between 0.35 and 0.75.
Can I address that?
Yeah.
I actually led Hamilton's master plan. And so I can tell you why it's different there. Your downtown's a linear downtown. And Hamilton's is not really. I mean, Bay Road has a strip, but that downtown is deep. And so the ability, if you have to look at not only the FAR, but also the setbacks. And I think what you have there is a form that's very different from yours. It's just a very different form. I know that downtown really well. And if you can kind of picture that large shopping center that's there on Bay Road, that's pushed really back from the street. And most of what's on Bay Road otherwise is non-conforming.
Would it be possible, are there other towns that you recommend that we look at that are similar in structure? Because that's the expertise that I don't have to think more than just, you know, what the raw number is, but more of the contextual piece of it. Are there other towns you recommend we look at for just a basis of comparison?
Well, I think too, Julie, I think we have a good form of consensus here on the 0.5. I mean, it's certainly something we can look into for the hearings and, you know, even going forward. But I think for the consensus for tonight, I think it's fairly obvious where everybody stands. And again, that doesn't mean it can't be looked at further. It just means on the basis of trying to move forward with the document. So we'll definitely keep that into account. Absolutely.
Okay.
And thank you. And Ms. Duca.
I'm good with the consensus.
Okay, thank you. The one person I haven't gone to yet is Ms. Jasinski. Do you have a question or are you in consensus?
I'm in consensus with the group.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Item number 1, Judy, is down.
Okay.
Second piece is height. Do you want to address that, Judy, before we open that up?
Yeah. I don't have your existing zoning open in front of me. So I think seems to me as though what you want in a downtown like yours are buildings that have a roof form and structure that kind of respects what's there. And you also are trying to get more activity in these buildings. So, you know, if you want to have all of that, then you need to think about a height that doesn't end up with a roof pitch that's kind of like this, right? So you want something that's more like this. So you need to think about, what do I have to do to get that and have 3 functional stories? And, you know, I would say nothing less than 40 feet. And some architects would argue that that's too low. But I mean, I've kind of sketched this out, and you can get 3 usable stories and have it at 40 feet. But give the planning board the ability to go up some. And again, I'm trying to respond to what I've heard, which is we want mixed use development. Well, if you want mixed use development, you know, you've got to think about what that entails. That's somebody having a building with multiple uses in it, which means multiple types of tenants, which is a very different operation from a building that's got maybe a shop on the first floor and some offices upstairs. So I was just trying to give the building enough room, if you will, to kind of go up, because, you know, you want other stuff on the ground. You want landscaping, you want walkways, you want pedestrian stuff. I mean, at some point you have to give people a space to actually make use of the economic value you're trying to give them. So to me, 40 feet and 3 stories at minimum. I mean, I would have written 45, but I thought you guys would shoot me. So I just said 40 feet, but let it go up to 45 by special permit.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to take a step back. Ms. Luttrell, I didn't notice you had your hand up. Was there something you wanted to comment? I'm assuming it was on the prior discussion.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted, so Hamilton, as in most, because I looked at 10 different towns and most of them are maximum lot coverage is 75%, not an FAR of 75.
Okay, thank you. So on the height, why don't we start with Ms. Conley?
I think what Judy says sounds reasonable. I'm good with that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Julie. Ms. Duca.
I'd agree with Judy.
Okay. Mr. Morse.
The way I have it written is fine, which is 40 feet and 3 stories, except by special permit from the planning board under section H below. I think that's excellent.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Luttrell.
I'm going to start the battling. I think 35 feet. As I said, I looked at 10 different towns: Harvard, Groton, Wayland, Sudbury. They're all 35 feet. And my idea of like a walkable small downtown is, 2.5, 3 stories, not, 4 or 5 story buildings. That's an urban downtown, not a small village downtown. So I would say 35 feet and over that by special permit. Keeping in mind that in this town on Route 9 or in our industrial, the maximum is 3 stories, 45 feet and 3 stories. So do we want our downtown to be taller than what's allowed on Route 9? That's my comment.
Thank you. Judy, do you want to respond to that?
Well, your Route 9 zoning is another whole set of issues, but I wasn't able to comment on that.
Okay, great answer. Ms. Houlihan, sorry.
I'm going to support the 40 feet, 3 stories.
Okay. Mr. Healy.
Makes sense to me.
Okay. Ms. Malinowski.
I'm fine with that too.
Okay. Mr. Shea.
I'm good with that also.
And Mr. Stivers.
Ditto.
All right. Ms. Jasinski.
I'm fine with the numbers too.
Ms. Braccio. I am fine with that as well. So, Judy, I guess that gives you, that was really much faster than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
That's great.
Lisa,
Yes,
if I could just tune in for a second.
absolutely.
It was pointed out recently that the elevation of the downtown is depressed. The almost the whole area around it is higher. So a taller building or a tall building in downtown would be looked at a little bit differently than if the downtown was on the top of a hill or was level. I'm just saying that that we had heard those comments. So it could be that the higher building would work, and again, it would have to be consistent with the roof shape that Judy was mentioning. And then the 3 stories. A long time ago, I was told that 3 stories was the maximum height of a building to be constructed in Southborough, because the fire department ladder truck, which actually had wooden ladders, would only reach up to a 3rd floor, and that was the controlling height was the size of the ladders on the ladder truck.
Thank you for the history lesson. That's very interesting. Makes sense. Thank you, Mr. Morris. Mr. Dennington, do comments, consensus? You're muted if you're still there. I'm sorry, Andrew, I spoke over you.
I don't have any comment on this.
Okay. Mr. McKay?
Thank you. I didn't realize my hand was raised.
It wasn't. I'm just asking because you're there.
Oh, no, I thank you. I appreciate that. It sounds like you've got a consensus at 40 feet with a special permit up to 45. And if that's the consensus, I'm good with that.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Next item, multifamily. I will throw it over to you, Judy, for clarity and or direction.
Is that a comment about the use regulations?
That was, let me pull this up real quick. There was a couple comments on the multifamily, particularly, let me just pull it up real quick. How many uses, we've gone through that. Multifamily up to 8 units. Judy, there was multiple comments on that. Comments were, this should have a mixed use compound. The purpose of this downtown district is to encourage commercial activity. Developers should be encouraged to add commercial uses to any new building development. There was a comment that 4 multifamily houses up to 8 units is allowed by special permit. Should the wording be over 8 residential units or up to 8 residential units? Another comment was this does not currently exist in today's zoning code, and I do not agree with the purpose of mixed use to promote small apartment complexes. Along with last comment was replaced with multifamily housing over 4 units as part of a mixed use development. That was the feedback.
So they're different uses and they're generally different developers. I just finished up about 6 months ago the first sort of big impact analysis of mixed use buildings that anybody's done in Massachusetts. And I want to tell you a little bit about them. Not every developer will do mixed use. A lot of developers are comfortable living in the world of commercial or living in the world of residential, and the twain shall never meet. So the fact that you allow mixed use doesn't mean that the floodgates are going to open and everybody's going to come running into your downtown to do a mixed use building. The housing units in mixed use buildings attract different markets. You know, if you think you've all rented and bought houses, I'm sure in your lifetime. And you think about what it is you're looking for when you buy a house versus what you were trying to do when you were renting an apartment, and what kind of environment you wanted to live in. The households that move into upper story units are just a different group of people than the people who are looking for a residential experience. And the developers who build this stuff are looking for, you know, they have different business expectations. They have a different business plan. So I would just say mixed use is already in here. You don't need to change that. It's already here. I think the issue is multifamily, and why would we do that at all? To people in economic development, housing is an economic development issue. I think it's taken a long time for the practice of economic development to catch up with this. But I think if you talk to, you know, sort of anybody working progressively in economic development in Massachusetts today, they're going to tell you this. So why would you have a multifamily building in a downtown district? It's to create more foot traffic. It's to have people living in your downtown who are actually going to walk down the street to buy a gallon of milk. Because I suspect most of you are not going to get in your car and drive to downtown Southborough to buy a gallon of milk unless it's 10 o'clock at night, if they're even open at that point. So it's about having foot traffic. It's about having people present in the district. You know, it's about offering people options who may not want to live in a single family home anymore, or somebody who's trying to move out of their parents' basement. I have one now. Would you like him? I will be happy to give him to your multifamily buildings in Southborough, but I can't imagine anybody today writing downtown zoning and not providing for multifamily housing. I can't imagine it.
Okay, thank you. We'll
I wouldn't do it. So that's why I put it in there. It's like, it's an economic development issue. I mean, I don't know why, I don't know how to explain it to you guys.
Okay, Julie, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, I don't really have additional comments. I agree, from the EDC's perspective, I think that, housing is an economic development issue, and that from speaking with our local businesses, they have been worried about diversity and housing stock, and, and having, they have trouble sometimes looking at gaining talent, because a lot of young people are still living in the cities, and there aren't good housing options out here. Not every 26-year-old wants to buy a 4,000 square foot colonial for $900,000. So it's nice to have other options. So I agree with Judy.
Okay, great. Thank you, Julie. Suzanne?
I would agree too. And I think, as we look at what we want the downtown to become, density, we want, part of creating a desirable location is about density, in the walkability and creating a sense of belonging and a sense of place, right? So I think, I agree with Judy. Like, I can't imagine not having a multifamily component as part of this.
Great, thank you. Mr. Morse?
So is the multifamily, under permitted uses by special permit from the planning board are as follows. That's section D.
Yeah,
It's number 5. Is that what we're talking about?
I think so, John. Yeah.
Yep,
I'm okay.
thank you. Ms. Latrell? You're muted, Mimi?
Yep.
There you go.
So multifamily, oh, so up to 8 units under special permit. But so then my question was up to 8 units, but then over 8 units requires affordable, but if you're up to 8 units, how do you get over 8?
So I'm just looking at the code, Mimi.
You know what, Mimi? You're absolutely right. And the funny thing about this is, I was doing some sketches. So don't everybody scream. Don't everybody scream. I want to hear it. It actually should be up to 12. I can't believe I didn't go back and change that. It should be up to 12. Sorry, Mimi, I'm glad. That's a good catch. Thank you.
The affordable part, though, you changed to 6, not 8, right?
Right, I think so. I think I did, but actually that multifamily was supposed to be up to 12, so. No, her comment is well taken. It was not supposed to be 8, so I apologize. But yes, the affordable is 6, and I want to talk about that before we're done. Because I think you need to know what the consequences of that change are. But let's get to that later.
Okay, that's perfect, Judy. I'll make sure we come back to you for that. Ms. Houlihan?
Did we finish with Mimi? Did she make a final comment?
I thought she was set. I can go back to her. Mimi, I apologize if I missed you.
So I think I need to marinate on that for a little bit, but I think that for now I'll say I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Okay, great. All right, Marnie, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm okay with the change of the up to 12 units and the mixed use, the mixed family housing.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Healy?
Very much in favor of it. The one thing I'll point out is I live right off the downtown district, and there are some I don't know if I'd call them multifamily. I guess multifamily means, some number above 2, but there are a couple of units like that right off of the downtown.
Right.
And they have young people living there.
Right.
And honestly, it makes a difference. And they walk downtown. And it already contributes sort of a different vibe to the area than if it were just single family houses. So I think I agree with Ms. Barrett. I think it's very important. I think the proof already is there that it makes a difference. And I really see it as an essential element. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Ms. Malinowski?
Thank you. So if we're talking about a 20,000 square foot parcel and it's 7,000 square feet that we can do at the 0.35 if we weren't going to special permit, and we assume that there's no retail and it's just a 12 unit apartments or whatever, that's not even 600 square feet for a single. Okay, so have you seen examples of that built?
It all depends on the lot area. You're absolutely correct on a 20,000 square foot lot with an FAR of 0.35. You're not going to get 12 units.
Right.
You'd have to have a bigger lot. I don't disagree with that at all.
Or go for a special permit, like we talked about earlier, where you're going for a 0.5.
Right. Then you can. Then you're gonna have to go for a special permit for the multifamily anyway. So
yeah,
you're asking for 2 special permits. But I'm just saying, if somebody doesn't want to take that on, and they have a 20,000 square foot lot, then maybe they're not doing 12 units. Maybe they're doing 9. Maybe they're doing 8.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to point out that 12 is probably not a number that would fit many lots at this point. And we're probably still talking about less than than 8, even though we're
Sure.
looking to approve 12. Okay, thank you.
Great, Chelsea, thank you. Mr. Shea?
Agree with the consensus so far on this.
Okay, great. Mr. Stivers?
Yeah, I agree with the importance of multifamily. And again, I remain concerned about the ability to get it built. So the combination of multifamily and affordable, which I also think is very important. I would continue to look to Judy for suggestions about are we at or near a threshold where a developer looks at this and says, it's just too much trouble, I don't want to do it. So let's try to avoid those kinds of results to find something that actually is going to get built.
Great, thank you, Mr. Stivers. Ms. Jazinski?
I'm in agreement with the consensus so far.
Great, thank you. Mr. Dennington, anything to add or comment?
No.
Okay, Mr. McKay?
Thank you. I'll admit I'm kind of re-educating myself a little bit on exactly how this particular issue has been drafted in the bylaw. But the one thing that's, I certainly agree with the sentiment that that mixed use and multifamily is kind of the whole purpose of downtown zoning. I mean, it goes to the very essence of the sense of place that you're trying to create. So I agree with the folks who have, kind of articulated it in that way. The struggle and the balance, I think, comes from something that Mr. Stivers just mentioned, which is, it's great to write this stuff, but it doesn't accomplish a whole lot if folks can't get it built. And the way that you can encourage that to happen in order to do that is you got to release a little bit of control. So I know on the one hand, we're very, the community is oriented towards making, most things a special permit requirement, but the more that you impose a special permit requirement and the more that you, the smaller the project is and the more that you impose those kinds of requirements on it, the less likely it is that you're actually going to get that project done. So, that's why the design guidelines and so forth become so important, because you still want to maintain that control. But I would just, I guess, note that, the more that we can release a little bit of control from the special permit requirements, while at the same time articulating exactly what we want in the bylaw, the more likely it is that we're going to get some of this stuff built.
Great.
Are
Thank
Mr.
you.
McKay and I agreeing?
We're going to write this down, Sam.
A watershed moment.
A lot of things have happened in 2020 that we didn't expect, Mr. Stivers.
Luckily, this is being recorded for us.
It's a new world.
All right. So Judy,
This is the first time this has happened, Mr. Stivers.
It's not. That's right. I remember both of them previously.
all right, Judy, I'm going to throw it back to you. I know you wanted us to come back to you anyway. I think the direction is pretty clear on this?
The only thing I want to say is I feel like I set Dawn up because Dawn went early before Mimi noticed that mistake. And I think we need to ask Dawn, do you feel differently about this with a cap of 12?
Okay, perfect.
No, I feel the same. I'm with the group.
Okay.
All right. Is there anything else on that, Judy?
I don't think so.
Okay. Next comes to the affordability piece. And very interested to hear your thoughts and what direction you need on this.
I'm doing a training on this very issue next week for several towns. I think any of you who know me well probably know this is my first love. And so I feel passionately about inclusionary zoning, and I think it's fine to say you want it. I don't think economic issues are quite as much of a problem here than I might say otherwise, because first of all, you don't allow multifamily at all right now. So for somebody to be able to do something they can't do now, that in itself is an incentive. The ability to do mixed use, which is not clear right now, that is an incentive. So freeing up the use helps. But my experience is that the developers who do these small projects are not the same developers who do bigger ones. Their business plan is different. Their expectations are different. Their tolerance for risk is different. Their capacity to deal with bureaucracy is different. So what we often find in inclusionary zoning that fails is when it's out of sync with the developers who do projects at the scale that communities want. Of course, allowing a developer to pay a fee in lieu instead of requiring them to do a unit, that gets you something. You may get, if you allowed that, then you might get developers to say, sure, I'll pay a fee, you know, a dollar equivalent, you know, instead of providing the affordable unit. Then, you know, your affordable housing folks or whatever has some money to use to work on, you know, some kind of affordable housing development if they want. I am just worried about laying a lot of expectations on these projects, given my sense of who's likely to build them. We are not talking about big projects here. So just be aware that this could be the thing that knocks somebody out more than an FAR of 0.445 or 50. Do I have, I mean, I don't know how, I mean, I know you guys have been, your town has been pretty engaged with affordable housing. So, you know, I would guess I'd probably say I'd kind of look to Shopsy for some thoughts on this, but small developers, just the thought of having to do an affirmative fair housing marketing plan. I don't know how many of you have ever worked on one of those. I have. It's a lot of work, and it's a long lead time for the whole lottery process. It just, if you want the units to count on the subsidized housing inventory, then you're buying that whole bureaucracy. If you don't care whether they count, then that's a different matter. But if you want units that help you work toward 10%, you are talking about a level of bureaucracy that small developers generally go, are you kidding me? They're not Avalon Bay, they're not Capital Properties, they're not these bigger developers who are just used to dealing with this stuff. So I'm concerned. Now, you know, I knocked the threshold down a little bit here. I thought, well, okay, you know, maybe it will work. Maybe. I have reservations.
Can you talk a little bit about the threshold that you knocked it down to, Judy?
I'm just afraid that when you say, you know, once you hit 6 units, which is a fairly common threshold, by the way. If you did a survey of inclusionary zoning at the town level in Massachusetts, you'd find 6 units fairly common. You also ought to go talk to those towns and find out how many units were created, but that's a separate matter. You know, it's not an uncommon threshold. So I felt like, you know, I don't want to be unreasonable here. And I'm hearing that people want an affordable housing benefit. So, you know, I was kind of willing to sort of take it down under 8. But I think you got to understand you may not get anything. That's my biggest concern, is that you've got so many expectations here. People don't want big projects. They want small projects. You know, well, maybe they're not going to be big enough that we're going to get anything. It's like, you guys all want a lot of stuff. And I'm not sure at some point, the more you lay on this zoning, at some point you don't get anything.
Do you think, Judy, that because our downtown district is so limited and so small, that plays into what you're saying as well? You know, the opportunities to create affordable housing will be a lot harder than it would have been if we had a much larger downtown and
with deeper lots, no split lots. I mean, you know, you got a lot of constraints in that district. It's not just the size of it, it's also the number of lots that have split zoning. And so, you know, there's a lot of constraints operating here. I professionally, I don't think you're going to see any affordable housing in this district, but I'm trying to respect a town perspective of wanting to provide affordability if you're going to allow people to do housing that they can't do right now.
Okay. So I'm going to change the order a little bit. We have 2 Shopsy members here.
Yeah,
so let's start with Ms. Jasinski.
Okay, Judy, I actually have some of the same concerns that you do. I've taken a look at the plan, and I've got some serious issues. It's a very limited number of availability for units for affordable. Access
is a huge issue for our seniors. So if we're looking at a multi-use building and we want to put an apartment above that, we're asking seniors to go up and down stairs. So there's an accessibility issue that knocks that group out. Then you have a young family that, wants to live above a retail place. Again, I don't think they're going to want to do that. So while I like the multifamily buildings, we might be able to do something like that, but this mixed use, I just don't see that as actually going to work for what we want to try to do with affordable housing. I don't think there's going to be enough units. I see there's an issue with a percentage. If you want 25% of whatever is built down there, the builders, I can't imagine a developer wanting to give up 25%. So if he only builds 4 units, one of them is going to be affordable. I just don't see that as viable. Right. So I have some serious issues with a lot of this affordability, the affordability downtown. I don't think it's going to work for us. I'm trying to be very open-minded about it, but personally, and I'm not speaking for my board right now, I don't see that this is a viable option for Shopsy, that we're going to get any affordability out of this. I just don't see the DHCD jumping in and saying, yeah, this is a great idea either. So that's my take on it. Again, our board is working on this stuff and we're very diligently working on trying to get affordability in town.
I know.
I just don't see this is not going to work for Shopsy. I just don't see it working, but maybe I'm wrong. So
Thank you, Dorian. Judy, do you want to address that?
Yeah, Dorian, I think the multifamily standalone might help you some.
Agree.
But this is not going to be a ton of units. And the other thing I'd say, not to drive everybody insane, but I mean, you can have mixed use buildings with residential on the ground floor as long as it's not facing the street. I mean, a lot of mixed use development bylaws will say upper story or ground floor with access from the side or rear of the building. So you're not taking away the commercial uses that activate the building at the street level.
Okay.
So as for disability or senior housing, I mean, that could be addressed. But again, looking for direction in the sphere that I am, I thought I'm just going to say upper floor housing here, but you could do multifamily. And that might get you a unit or two if people can actually make it work.
I agree.
Thank you, Judy. Ms. Malinowski, as a member of Shopsy.
Thank you. So this is one of the sections that I commented on as well, and kind of, trying to put my Shopsy hat on and saying, if we're going to do an affordability component, then let's make it achievable, right? And if we go back to my 12 unit example, if 1 unit out of that 12 was affordable, then you're talking about a 500 square foot apartment, which probably doesn't address being able to help a family. Right. Or if it's on a second floor, like Dorian said, it's not helping a senior. Right. So I do think that we're limited with what we can do there. And we did talk about some of this in our last Shopsy meeting. And, Shopsy is concerned with the individual units that can be affordable and not necessarily, I mean, obviously we care about making the minimum requirements under the index, but if Shopsy can get 1 unit, we don't really care about the other 3 that would count towards the number, right? We care about the people that we can actually get affordability for. So I think Shopsy is less concerned with hitting the number versus actually the units that are affordable. So I think kind of given this conversation, I'm not sure that this is the area that we'll be able to capitalize on affordability, although I would still like to see some language in there, Judy. And, if the 6 versus the 8, I'm not convinced that we should knock it down to 6 if we're going to then lose something getting built, right? If a developer is saying, I want to do 6, 5, and if you want 1 to be affordable, well, then I'm not going to make enough profit to do the 6. Well, then do we want to lose multifamily altogether? So I think from my perspective as a selectman, I'm also concerned with it getting built. So I'm, I'm having a hard time with this one because I want there to be an affordability component, but I don't want to turn off something to get built. So hopefully that makes sense.
It does.
So Chelsea, are you proposing changing the 6 back to 8?
I'm concerned that somebody wouldn't build a 6 based on Judy's comments that she just made on the type of developer that would come in and do a 6, right? So, I don't want to, of course, I'm concerned with having an affordability component and, helping people coming into town. But if that's going to prevent us from building, I don't know if one unit is worth losing building something.
That's
so
correct.
I think I'm struggling with this.
That's the point. Agree.
So, I know Dorian, I think Dorian and I are the only ones from Shopsy on here. And, I definitely think Shopsy as a whole understands that we're limited here in this area. And I think it's unfortunate. And I think, of course we would like to see something, but not at the expense of not improving our downtown either.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
So I think, Lisa, I don't know. I'm having a hard time saying that we should do 6 now, even though I'm the one that put the comment in. We needed to lower the 8.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll come back to you guys at the end and hear what everybody else has to say. That might be helpful. But Judy, did you want to add anything to Chelsea's comments or respond?
No, I find this conversation really helpful.
Okay.
And it is a struggle. It is it's a big policy question. Like, you want to make sure there's an affordability benefit, but you don't want to kill development. And I maintain that you won't see any affordable units in a mixed use building in that area. They're just too small. I do think that you could see an affordable unit or two in a freestanding multifamily building.
Okay.
I really do. I think that would be okay.
Okay, we'll move to Mr. Morris.
My, I guess question is there any harm in leaving the affordable component in here? I agree with Chelsea that there's concern, but it was my understanding, and I'm not that strong in this area, but the more I thought the DHCD, which I don't want to express my opinion about them, but I thought that they would consider towns that have more opportunities for affordable housing to be, higher up or better than towns that have limited opportunities. So by leaving this in, if there's no harm in leaving it in, even though, and possibly adjust the number, then the town should be able to say that we've taken as many opportunities as we can to insert affordable housing. So I guess the way I'm looking at it, unless there's something, unless the negative of leaving it in is greater than the negative, you know what I'm trying to say. If it's better to leave it in for the town, then let's leave it in, unless there's something so negative that it would tip the balance and we should take it out.
What DHCD cares about, Dawn, in terms of that cutting some slack to a community, is has the zoning produced affordable units? There are a lot of towns in Massachusetts that have an inclusionary zoning requirement that hasn't done anything because it was written wittingly or unwittingly, it was written to fail. Right. So having zoning that doesn't work doesn't create any affordable housing. And that's what the state perspective is. So yes, there are communities where DHCD and the Housing Appeals Committee have been, I don't want to say generous, but fair, they've treated kindly, activity in a community that's actually produced housing. But simply having the zoning on the books is not an opportunity unless it's realized. That's the problem. So I don't know that it doesn't do anything for you if it's not going to work. That's the dilemma.
So take it out.
Well, unless you want to have, you know, a higher threshold than 6. I mean, it's up to, I think you guys need to decide what you want.
Then raise the threshold. I'm fine either way, but unless leaving it in causes more damage than taking it out, then leave it in.
Thank you, Mr. Morse. Ms. Houlihan.
So I think what Chelsea and what Dorian said really resonated for me. So I understand the policy challenge. And so from Judy's perspective, she said leaving affordable in a multifamily. So I think if there's a way to kind of leave it in the multifamily designation, I would support that. And then, you know, at least it's in there for the multifamily, and then there's no obligation from any other sense of development. So I'd support that way.
Okay, great. Thank you. Ms. Luttrell.
So there's affordable housing, which, you know, will be part of our inventory, which I think is up to 80% AMI. And then there's workforce housing up to 120% AMI. Would that be more likely to, if we were more flexible on that? Because I think we need more diversity in housing and not just to only meet our 10%. I think having workforce housing would be beneficial also, but I just don't know if that makes any difference.
Well, the only thing I can say, how do I put this? This is my dodge for the night. Writing the regulations for a workforce housing bylaw is beyond my scope. The ease with which I dealt with this was simply to say the units have to meet the requirements of DHCD for the local initiative program. That wraps in a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't have to write out. And I'm not being lazy here, I'm being honest with you. It means you get a deed restricted unit. It means you get fair housing compliance. You know, it means that, you know, that you have a way to enforce the deed restriction. All that gets wrapped into what it means to have a unit that counts on the subsidized housing inventory. Now you come to workforce, which sounds like a great term, except the whole body of regulatory stuff that applies to a 40B unit doesn't necessarily apply to a workforce unit. For starters, how are you keeping it at 120% affordable over time? The answer may be, well, we have a deed restriction. Well, the problem, of course, is you can't make that perpetual, because in order to have a perpetual deed restriction for affordable housing in Massachusetts, the Department of Housing and Community Development has to sign off on it. No DHCD signature, you don't have a perpetual restriction. Maybe you don't care, but now can you see how a whole bunch of things have to be accounted for in the drafting of these regulations? That really is just not something I can tackle within my scope right now. I think it's something that maybe you guys should look at for your own kind of affordable housing zoning policy down the road. It's just not something I can take on, because I know what's involved, and we don't want to make this any more complicated than it already is.
Okay. So sorry for even bringing that up.
No, it's all right, Mimi. It's just that it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
Just trying to think outside the box and see if there's another way of making more diversity in housing stock.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I would lean on you on this, Judy, if you think that, you know, we could get an affordable and a multifamily at, you know, over 8 units, then, you know, I'm fine with that.
I think, you know, 8 or more They can they can build up to 12 units under the, proposed zoning, once I correct it, of course. You might get an affordable unit, you might get two. I mean, it's a special permit. So, again, the thing that's going to be hard for the planning board is how many expectations you're going to lay on this project in the special permit process before you may not get anything. But that's a policy issue. I think that you're okay if you have an affordable housing requirement for 8 or more units. I do, as long as it's not a hefty requirement. Like 25%, forget it. Nobody's going to do that.
So I'm good with the 8 then.
All right, thank you, Mimi. Anything else?
Forget I ever mentioned workforce housing.
No, Mimi, it's a valid thing to talk about. I just can't deal with it in the context of this scope. But you're right to bring it up.
Great, thank you. Julie?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a great conversation. I was definitely moved by Dorian and Chelsea's perspective, and agree with Marnie, and think that might be a good way to split it, because I agree that, having something on paper, it doesn't matter if we can't serve the community with actual units. So, let's move on from that and figure out a different place to do that, and keep it in the multifamily bylaw. And I also think that, to Chelsea's point, having some housing there versus not is, we don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater here, especially because even if they're not designated affordable units, I assume, it does contribute to diversity in housing stock, which is an economic development issue and an affordability issue in some ways too. It's going to, attract the workforce that the area needs, and give people different options for housing. And presumably, there will be a little bit more affordability with these smaller units than in most of the housing stock in town. So that's it.
Great, thank you, Julie. Ms. Duca?
I'd echo what Julie said. I'm good with the 8. We'll keep it at that.
Great, thank you. Mr. Healy?
Yeah, I agree with all of the wrestling that's going on in people's minds. I guess, Judy, just a couple of, is the reason you think 8 is, it sounds like you think it's a significantly better number than 6 in terms of the possibility / likelihood that something would actually get built. I'm just curious, is that because once you get up to an 8+ unit development that you're starting to get, you talked about categories of developers. Is it because you're starting to get a different category of developer at that size, and as a result, it's going to be somebody who's more comfortable dealing with the bureaucratic requirements of affordable housing, or is it something else?
I think I get a high enough return on cost.
Okay. And so it really, whether it's a smaller developer or medium on up developer, it's the math they're doing from a potential profit standpoint is what's going to determine it.
In my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. And you're not just to make us feel good, but you are in fact comfortable that looking at the way this bylaw would read, with 8 instead of 6 wouldn't just make us feel good that we've got an affordable housing component in there, but it wouldn't be the same level of deterrent to the possibility of something getting built if you went down to 6.
You'd be amazed at what adding a couple of market rate units does to a program.
Okay. All right. So you've got a much higher comfort level going from 6 to 8.
I do.
Yeah. Okay. Then I'm good.
Okay. Chelsea, I'm going to come back to you and Dorian at the end. Mr. Shea?
Having followed along, I'm good with the 8 as well.
Thank you. Mr. Stivers?
Yep. I'm also good with the 8, but I've got a question for Judy. I guess following on Chelsea's point, I'm very interested in getting our 10% threshold in the subsidized housing inventory, but I think there's no chance that it's going to be have a significant impact from what we can do downtown. It's hard to get there one at a time. I think the way we're going to do that is to find another Madison Place or something like that to actually get a sizable number of units. We need somewhere between 60 and 100, depending on how you look at it. And so downtown is not going to do it for us. If we were to simply say, we don't care about DHCD relative to this. Did I hear you correctly, Judy, saying that if we took that constraint off, that we could maybe get developers who would put in units that were maybe not technically affordable under all the rules and regulations, but were effectively more affordable for people to actually live there?
The reason I'm really anxious about that is that yeah, you can take away the bureaucracy, but then you've still got the issue of, do you care if someone buys or rents an affordable unit and then 2 years from now it becomes market rate? In other words, how are you going to protect that affordability? So that's something that has to be written into the regulations, because DHCD, once you take DHCD away, you're creating a whole bunch of issues that have to be addressed in the zoning. And I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible.
But again, it seems to me that the focus is, I'd really like to get something built by developers, and maybe it's worth looking at how we could do that through local zoning or regulation to at least get some distance there. I'd be happy with 5 or 10 years versus perpetuity to get some things built, bring more diversity in terms of income levels and so forth into downtown, and try it and see how it works.
I mean, I think it's a perfectly noble and appropriate thing to consider. I just know what it takes to write that kind of zoning, and I feel like it's beyond my scope, to be honest with you. I think that's a policy issue you guys need to deal with outside of the downtown district, is what are you trying to do about affordable housing in Southborough? Yeah. And where are the appropriate places to do it? And how do you set these thresholds? And when do you care if it's an SHI unit or not? I just think that's a big discussion that needs to happen outside the very small project I'm working on here.
Agreed. And I think that I'm willing to say that I don't think we're going to get significant impact on downtown for a variety of reasons. On the other hand, if there are other ways that we could actually attract development and investment there to get more diverse housing without thinking about subsidized housing inventory, I think that would be interesting to think about. But
I mean, the other option, Sam, is you could just take the affordable housing requirement out entirely. That's a big policy decision. That's, but I mean, you could do that. You could just say, look, these are going to be such small projects. Nothing's going to be over 12 units. What are we really going to get out of this? And say, this isn't worth it. I mean, you could do that.
I think for now, I'm fine with bumping it up to 8 and thinking about the bigger picture. But I would certainly entertain taking it out, simply recognizing that it may deter.
You guys might want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Bigger scale. Yeah.
I'm only one very minority vote here, but we can revisit. Yeah. So up to 8's fine with me.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Stivers. Is there anything else, Sam? Sorry, before I move on. Is that it?
Nope.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Dennington, do you have anything you might like to add?
No, but Lisa, I have a question. It seems like in this meeting, do you have a list of kind of topics that you've been going through one by one?
We have, Andrew. We started out with 7. This is the 4th, and then we're going to open it up a little bit more based on the comments that were supplied. These were the ones that we deemed were like a priority. While Judy was here, we wanted to make sure that we could find some form of consensus on these items. And then we're going to open it up as we go further along after we get through these 7.
Okay. Do you have on your list the definition of mixed use development?
I do. That's going to be going into the next phase, the first item.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Mr. McKay, is there anything you might like to add? You're muted, Dave, if you have any comments. If not, I will continue on. Okay, I will take that as a no. Judy, I'm going to go back to Ms. Jasinski and Ms. Malinowski. I'll start with Dorianne. Is there anything further, Dorianne, as Chair of Shopsy you'd like to add, or are you good with the path and the direction we're going?
No, I like the direction we're going. I just don't feel that the downtown area is going to really make any kind of an impact on our DHCD requirements. Right now, up to December 31st, I believe the number of units we need to reach the 10% is 71. That ends on December 31st. As of January 1st, I believe that number jumps to 101. So there's no way we're going to get any kind of make any kind of an impact with 1 unit or 2 units downtown. We really need to find another avenue to bring more to affordability, to help people. And our primary objective isn't necessarily meeting what DHCD wants us to do. We want to help people. That's our biggest concern. We want to reach the number, but we really want to help people. And so Shopsy is working very hard to try to figure out a way to do this. We're grasping at straws. We've looked at all the property owned in town. We're trying to figure out a way to do this, but the mixed use, I just don't see that really helping us. I do like the multifamily. That is a possibility, but I don't see that in downtown in the business district. So
Doreen, do you think that the issue is bigger than, it sounds like the issue is bigger than just the downtown? So
our issue is definitely much bigger than just the downtown. It's
correct.
A huge issue, and
so
Shopsy has a lot of work.
So are you against putting it up to 8 in the multifamily?
No, I'm agreeing with that. That's fine.
Okay.
It's just not going to make an impact for us. It's just not. So it'll be helpful if we can get 1 unit. It'll help somebody, but it's not going to have a large impact.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Is there anything else, Dorian?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Malinowski.
I just want to thank everyone for the discussion. I think this was extremely helpful, and Judy, it answered a lot of my questions. So I'm good with making it the 8 on the multifamily. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Judy, is there any last thing you want to add or comments you might like to make on this one?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move right along. Number 5 is green space. And I know that there was a lot of questioning and comments on the matrix. So, and I know actually, Julie, I'm going to go to you first because I know this was on your list as well. So after Judy, I'll go to you.
You asking me to comment first or somebody else?
No, you first, and then I'm going to go to Julie.
Oh, so, I heard the comments from people about concern about, landscaping and so forth and open space in this area. Again, because it's a small area and we're talking about kind of lot by lot development. It seems to me as though the best way to address it is to have what I'm calling an open space ratio, which is 20%. That's a lot for small lots. So I've proposed to include an open space ratio on each lot with the placement of at least half of that open space kind of visible to, to the street. So I can't really recommend more than that, or at some point you start to make it, again, it's this impossibility of what are you going to get built. So I'm trying to find ways here to kind of compromise among these different thoughts about what the downtown area should be.
Great, thank you. Julie, I'll start with you first.
Sure, yeah, I know this was a comment that came up a lot, and I know when we, in the EDC, when we first started talking about, downtown and what our vision was, having green open space, the whole concept of walkability and a place to congregate outdoors, is definitely part of our vision. So I think, what I'm trying to make sure that I understand, and it sounds like this, baking in a ratio makes sense. But what I'm trying to think about with how we sort of put our vision into something that is will actually set some guidelines and parameters for anybody coming, investing and developing downtown. Does it make sense? Is this something that should be in some sort of design guidelines or other standards outside of the zoning document to sort of promote that vision that we want, again, without over regulating ourselves into a pigeonhole that's not workable, but also having you know, outside of the zoning bylaw, which is obviously very, very difficult to amend, something like a design guideline or some other sort of standards to allow a developer to know what the expectation is coming in. But something that has some more flexibility than having to go to town meeting and amend a bylaw because you want a different kind of tree or something. So that was my question that I was hoping Judy could help shed some more light on.
So
Thank you, Julie.
I provided for in this draft zoning, the authority of the planning board to adopt design guidelines for site plan review. And that's really where these things belong, is site plan standards. I mean, you don't want to put in your zoning bylaw, thou shall have, you know, X% of your open space in ground cover and Y% in, you know, shrubbery. And I mean, you just don't want all that stuff in your zoning. What you want to do is give the planning board the ability to adopt those standards. So that's written in here. That, in my opinion, that's where it belongs.
Okay. Julie, anything else?
No, I think that's right. So and it's typical because I've heard of other towns also having like a separate design standard committee. Is it typical that the planning board does that?
Oh, that's all over the lot. I mean, there's a provision in 40A for a planning board to appoint a design review board. Many towns I've worked in that used to have design review boards have gotten rid of them because it was just one more board that somebody had to go and make happy.
Yeah.
So my recommendation is let the planning board's already doing site plan review. So let them do site plan review and give them the tools to do it well. And not that they're not doing it well now. I'm just saying that design standards really that go at the building and the site, you know, overall design is probably going to be most helpful
part of
to
this.
do them.
Yeah. So it would just be part of the site plan review process.
Yeah.
And is that's something that planning board kind of already does anyway, right?
Well, the planning board already has site plan review authority. So all I'm saying here is, you know, you may adopt design guidelines to assist in the review of a site plan. Just giving them the authority, making it clear that they have the authority to do that.
Okay, and then what's the, and this is just for my education. So once those standards are set, is that like if these are the parameters and if they're spelled out clearly, can developers rely on that, or is that subjective?
Site plan review is a review for the operation of a site, safety, aesthetics, you know, conformance with the zoning. If the planning board has design standards that say, or it's not even standards, it's guidelines. They have guidelines that say, you know, they have a preference for, you know, a certain percentage of the street frontage to have canopy trees. I'm just making this up as I go along. That's a standard a developer ought to be able to rely on. But I mean, beyond that, I don't know what to say. It's like people have design standards and developers want to know what you want so that they can design your site plan accordingly.
Okay. Is that it, Julie?
Yep, no, that was helpful. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Julie. Ms. Duca.
I think if the question, you know, is around where the green space comment, you know, lies, I think I would agree that it probably belongs more in the design guide than trying to create something that I think what Julie said, you know, the EDC, we've been really concerned about making it green space, walkability, all of that as part of this whole, you know, creation of or rezoning of the downtown. But I think we want to be careful about putting too many regulations in that are going to scare people away. So I do think that it would sit well in the design guidelines.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Morris, I'm very interested to hear where you're going to go on this based on some of the feedback we've just heard.
Thank you. The open space ratio is the way to go. I think Judy, that's the way to go. The ratio, the number I was just trying to find what that is. Was it 10%,
20%, Don.
20? Maybe
But
I was
half of it
thinking,
has to be placed in a certain way between the front building line and the street line.
okay. Well, the concept of an open space ratio, I think, is the way to go. The percent is probably up for discussion. You got to remember, this is a downtown. So some, I think, builders or concepts would have no front setback. The front of the building would be right at the sidewalk, and the parking in the back or on the side, so on, which we see in a lot of villages where there's no space, there's no real space in the front of the building. As far as design guidelines, this was discussed probably when we created the village business district. And the way it was handled was to stay away from design guidelines because it's very subjective, and it can move a little. So the way but we also wanted to have some control over, what the design would be, and we handled that with the special permit. So to have a project in any of the village business districts requires a special permit, and that gives the board great authority to impact the design. And an example of that is in Fayetteville, is at Walgreens. The neighbors had tremendous input into right down to the color of the building and some of the architecture, the windows, and that was all cooked into the special permit. And the incentive to the builder was to get the special permit, and if the design requests by the neighbors was reasonable, then they did it, and that's what they did, and it worked well. So I think the board, this current board, hasn't really been too involved in design discussions, design guidelines, but I think I'm with Judy that it's good to, it's a lot easier, and it's good to not have them because you always can't get them all, you miss some of them, and as boards change, things which could change. So it should be handled through, in my opinion, through the special permit. Leave it alone, keep the special permit, and rely on the neighbors to have input relative to the design. But again, the open space ratio, I think, is the way to go.
Thank you. Judy, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, so just to be clear, the way this is written, site plan review in the downtown village business district would not require a special permit. It would be site plan review. The only time the special permit would trigger is for a use that requires a special permit. Because at that point, the whole permit gets subsumed by the special permit process. So you don't need a separate site plan review and special permit. Site plan becomes part of the special permit review. So if the use requires a special permit, then the site plan review essentially goes away, if you will. It just becomes part of the special permit process. If the use does not require a special permit, it would be regular site plan review, subject to design guidelines adopted by the planning board. So I think a lot of the things that the planning board has worked to regulate through the special permit process, if you set aside use, just the land use, set this the land use aside, site plan review on an administrative basis, meaning site plan review decision by the planning board, the board can regulate design. The board can regulate, can write conditions into a site plan decision to require certain aspects of the site design that they intend to impose on that special permit approval. And it becomes the job of the building inspector to make sure that site plan decision is enforced. just as the building inspector ends up being the one who's got to carry the ball for making sure the special permit gets enforced. So the planning board has plenty of room in site plan review to regulate these aspects of operation, safety, and design. You don't really need a special permit to do that.
I hear you, Judy, but my brain is telling me now that town council wouldn't completely agree with that relative to design, that unless you're under a special permit requirement, then you look at the site plan review, and if you meet those minimum standards, then the planning board would be out of bounds to write permit conditions that go beyond that.
I understand that. That's not my experience in other towns, but I'm not getting in the middle of what town council wants or doesn't want.
Well, it's not what he wants. I think it's the direction or the guidance that he's been giving us relative to site plan compared to plain old site plan and a special permit.
I understand.
We've been consistently told that a special permit gives the planning board considerably more latitude to with conditions than without a special permit.
Okay, and that's just a matter I can't comment on. I've made my recommendation. That's the best I can do.
So, Mr. Morris, I guess I'm at a quandary on this one.
Maybe we could, after we hear from others relative to this, but this may be an area that needs to be, as I said earlier, an area of discussion or disagreement that we can continue to work on. Unlike the previous part of this meeting tonight, where we seem to have come to consensus on the other items, I'm not sure if we will with this tonight.
Okay, I'll tell you what, we'll come back after, as we did with Shopsy, Don, we'll come back and kind of let you respond to what you're hearing from everybody else. How's that?
Good, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Houlihan.
So I come back to the whole vision and what we aspire to as a future of Southborough. And I really, I had a chance to look at the design guidelines, and I like the concept of a design guidelines. So I just don't, like Julie, I know had a question around enforcing that if they stuck inside that it would be, that's the way to go. And I think there should be latitude there. They're guidelines, they're not necessarily mandated. But I like the idea of it. And I think if it all kind of ties in with everything that Mimi's doing on master planning committee and what is it that we envision the future of Southborough, we have to grow, we have to develop, we have to kind of encourage economic development. So on the question at hand, I think the open space at 20% is kind of my recommendation on preserving the green space, and let's just kind of be consistent on that piece. And then I think relative to the design guidelines and special permit required versus by right, I'm new. I'm the newest member of the planning board. I would defer to my colleagues in what their perspective is, but I think I'm open to a debate and to kind of going towards the design guidelines as something we could help people who want to actually develop and put money into our town. So I think we should be helpful versus hindering them.
Great, thank you. Ms. Luttrell.
Oh, boy. So I like the open space ratio. And I like the idea of the design guidelines, but having not dealt with them before, I'm not sure how they work. So are they like regulations? Is that what design
Zoning
guidelines?
bylaw provides authority to adopt design guidelines that the planning board uses during the site plan review process to review and impose conditions on the plan.
Do you have thoughts on that, Mimi? I think. Did we lose you?
Latitude.
Oh, we lost you, Mimi.
Oh,
You're now back. Sorry. Can you start
Oh,
over?
no,
Sorry.
never. Was my most intelligent statement all night. Now I'll never get it back. On the one hand, the chairman is correct that, you know, the special permit gives the planning board a lot more latitude in working with developers to get what will work for them and for the neighbors and the town. But here we're trying to make it easier for developers, so it's most of it's by right and not special permit. So yeah, I think I agree with, in theory, with the design guidelines and the open space ratio, but it's up to debate on how they will work. Thanks.
So Judy, can you just touch on that? Because I mean, would the design guidelines have to be done in conjunction with this zoning article? Otherwise it's kind of obsolete, that you're going to be missing a piece when somebody brings a project forward. Am I misinterpreting that?
Bylaw gives the planning board the authority to adopt design guidelines.
The bylaw does. Okay.
The proposed bylaw says the planning board may adopt design guidelines and apply them to major site plan approval applications regardless of whether a special permit is required.
Okay, so from just so before we move on, just so I'm making sure that I'm writing this down correctly. Marnie and Mimi would be in favor of exploring the design guidelines and the 20% ratio, and Mr. Morris is more in favor of keeping it under the special permit that gives them additional latitude.
So just to be clear, these are different concepts. The 20% open space ratio is a dimensional standard.
Right.
The design guidelines are standards that get applied to the review of a site plan.
Yeah.
And believe me, because the developer wants a yes, they don't want to be tied up for 6 months or a year. They'll pay attention to your design guidelines. And if they don't, you know, they're at their own peril.
Yeah.
They run the
So
risk of getting an approval from the planning board with a zillion conditions that they still have to live with.
It just seems this discussion has gone into two very different directions. So I'm just trying to keep them both on the table. So as we move along that, you know, maybe we can kill two birds with one stone on this one. Okay, so Mr. Healy.
Oops, there we go. Judy, I think what I hear is a framework that really isn't all that unusual. In other words, the zoning bylaw would be the enabling statute, be adopted by town meeting. And as part of that enabling statute, it would give the planning board the authority to essentially promulgate regulations. And those regulations would be the design standards. And so the advantage of doing it that way, as opposed to special permit, is that you would have two levels of certainty. Number one, the certainty of the requirements in the zoning bylaw. And second, the certainty of what the planning board is going to look to as part of its site review. Do I have that right?
And third, reducing the risk of appeal.
Okay, and the reason you're risking you're limiting or reducing whatever the risk of appeal is because you've got things on paper, and that presumably again, in terms of the zoning bylaw adopted by town meeting, so that's got to go through the normal muster that any zoning bylaw does, and then you've given the planning board the authority through town meeting to promulgate these essentially regulations, these design standards. And as long as you are not doing something crazy and running, tying a developer's hands behind his or her back by running afoul of your own design standards, then again, you've got a level of certainty for them, and you've got protection for yourself on the appellate side.
Yes,
Is-
and it's easier to overturn a special permit than it is
Okay.
a site plan decision that essentially is someone's ticket to a building permit.
Okay, and I'm guessing because of that construct, what you said in terms of other communities, it really doesn't strike me as that controversial a concept. And so Mr. Morris is concerned that you wouldn't have the ability to put, I might be using the wrong word, conditions, but you wouldn't be able, you would have the ability so long as you were acting consistent with the design standards that you've promulgated.
And within the authority of the zoning bylaw.
Got it. Okay. And again, that doesn't strike me as sort of an extraordinary concept.
It isn't.
Okay.
It's done in many communities.
Got it. Okay. All right. Put that aside. You've said a bunch of times, and I believe me, I take you at your word that you're really familiar with the downtown area in Southborough, not just from the words on a paper, the current zoning regulations, but what it currently looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And it just the concept of an open space ratio makes a lot of sense to me. It's just I'm thinking about the businesses that currently exist in our little downtown Southborough, and other than the Southborough House of Pizza and that building, I'm not sure that any of the others would comply with that requirement.
They don't have to, as long as.
No, I understand they don't have to, but in other words, if they did have to, they wouldn't. And I'm just wondering if we are, again, one of the concerns being getting it built, if we are, again, maybe I'm wrong, 20% seems like a lot to me for when you're talking about tiny lots in a downtown area, and imposing a 20% open space requirement on that. That just seems like a lot. And again, particularly thinking about the businesses that are down there already that have nowhere near 20% of open space involved in their businesses.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having trouble reconciling those two things. So that's me thinking out loud. But it makes me think that 20% feels like a high number.
Okay.
So I'm thinking here.
Okay.
You might want to take a hypothetical, make a square lot, draw it on a piece of paper, draw 35 feet from the back, 20 feet in from the front. Mind you, the minimum is 10, the maximum is 20. So there is a build to line implied here. It's just not right at the street. Draw in the setbacks on the side. Figure out your area. Minus it out of the area out of 10,000 square feet and tell me where you are. I think if you do that math, you may find that 20% isn't as draconian as it seems.
Okay, I will. I'm not quite sure I understood everything you said, but I will try to do that.
Well, my point is that the dimensional standards for the lot are more than just the lot area. There's also setback requirements for the building. So anything that's not built on and doesn't have parking on it is going to be available to count toward that open space ratio.
Got it. Okay.
Now, 20% is, I wouldn't make it any higher than that. It's high. But again, like I feel like I'm just getting over and over again with this project caught in a mix of what everybody's wants. People want open space. They want landscaping. Oh, they want buildings. That's like, you got to tell me what you want because I've given this my best shot.
No. Believe me, I get that. I'm just trying to find out. Again, it just struck me that looking at what exists in downtown Southborough right now, that most of what currently exists, which looks perfectly fine in terms of nice little shops and things like that, but that you wouldn't be able to build those now under these guidelines. And I'm wrestling with whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing.
You might get something better.
Okay, fair enough. All right, thanks.
All right, thank you, Marty. Ms. Malinowski.
I just have one question. Judy, did you just say that the open space on the front of the building cannot be parking? That does not count towards the 20%?
You can't have parking in front of the building.
At all?
Right.
Okay. Okay.
The open space ratio is 20% and at least half of it has to be contiguous and located between the front building line and the front lot line. unless the planning board approves a different placement of the open space as part of site plan review. So they can't change the 20%, but they can change the placement of it.
So, so in Marty's example of what exists today, if a developer were to come in and rebuild, knock down the building, rebuild the lot, and they currently had parking in front of the building, then it would need to go to site plan review if they wanted to continue to have that in the front of the building.
I don't think they could put parking in front of the building and within a 20-foot setback, because, you know, talk to the fire department, but I don't think they can make it work.
Okay. Okay.
I mean,
And-
you can have an absolute prohibition against it. I think there may be something like that in the zoning now for the village business district, but I don't remember. So I don't want to say that. But the setback is so narrow that I think it's going to be tough for anybody to actually get parking in, and also an access lane. I mean, it just doesn't work.
Okay. And related to what the planning board was talking about, I would defer to what they're comfortable with the special permit versus the guidelines. I don't really have an opinion either way.
Great, thank you. Mr. Shea.
So likewise, I would defer to planning board on special permit versus guidelines. And I guess similar to what Ms. Connolly was going through at the beginning of this, trying to envision how the floor area ratio would look like on a site. I'm now trying to add in this 20% landscaping thing as well. So Judy, I think I'll go through that mental exercise and draw it out on a piece of paper just to see if I can get comfortable with the 20% myself. But just hope we're not in a situation with all the ratios, percentages that have to be met, plus parking, driveway areas that, you know, that winds up being a limiting factor on what can actually be built. And we're back in that situation where we're not, achieving the end result that we have. So I guess I'll hold on, concurrence with the 20% at this point.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Shea. Mr. Stivers.
A couple of things. I actually am interested in the design guidelines. I think that adds some certainty for a developer, expectation that if they follow that, there's some reasonable chance they can get approval. So that's, to me, worth something, but I'll also defer to the planning board on how they think that works best. I think Judy's math does work in terms of open space and the setback kind of stuff. So I think that we're not as draconian as it may sound, and I'm okay with the current proposal, at least as the working model here. I am curious, has the Open Space Preservation Commission weighed in on this at all? I'm a little surprised they're not here tonight.
So Sam, they commented on the document itself.
Right, I saw that.
Yeah, but as far as anything further than that,
that's all we have at this
right,
point.
that's all we have. I don't think they've commented on the 20% ratio.
Be interested to see if they have anything else to say about it. But again, it sounds to me like a reasonable effort at a difficult problem. And let's think about it a little more. But for now, at least, that seems reasonable to me.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stivers. Let's see. So I also, I think the 20% ratio is, I like the 20% ratio, Judy. And as far as the standards, again, I'm going to defer to planning board. As far as this document goes initially, I know that there's going to be hearings and everything, and that may change. The only worry I have is one of the things that Mr. Morris mentioned with, are we losing, and maybe you can answer this question, are we losing the ability by doing the design guidelines versus the special permit that has a little bit of latitude, that if a building's going up in someone's backyard, they no longer have the ability to, try to get something that they feel, as an abutter fits better within the scope of their neighborhood, or even being able to comment. And
you still have a public hearing process for site plan review. The difference between the special permit and as of right is the ability to impose discretion and deny. a project. If someone, let me play this out for you.
Yep.
If I propose a mixed-use building, meets your dimensional requirements, has your open space, meets your parking requirements, meets the planning board's design guidelines, isn't too tall, you know, waves a magic wand and does everything you ask it to do. The planning board cannot turn that project down. They can impose conditions on their approval of the site plan around plantings, around parking placement, around the things that are appropriate for site plan review, but they can't turn it down. That's the issue that I think you asked me to deal with at the beginning of this project, is how do you create something that's more predictable? So I turn this now back to all of you and say, if you want predictability, you don't want a special permit. If you want to allow that discretion to deny a project that is an allowed use, that meets the dimensional requirements, that meets all the other stuff you're asking it to do, if you want the ability to deny that project because somebody doesn't like it, then keep the special permit. I don't mean to be flip, but I mean, it comes down to, do you want predictability or not? It's a policy decision. I was asked to kind of deal with that. That's what I've done.
Okay, so I think, and I'm going to go back to planning board on this, but I think what, and correct me if I'm wrong, Judy, that there seems to be consensus to deferring to the planning board to some degree on what they think. So let's bounce back to, you know, the planning board and, you know, maybe give you the guidance that you're looking for. I think we're halfway there.
Well, the planning board can make my job easy. I just take out, you know, 174.10.1, just take it out.
Okay, well, let's go to the planning board. Let's go. Mr. Morris, you've heard all the comments and what Judy said. What kind of guidance would you give us at this point? Are you there? There you are.
Okay, I had a hard time unmuting. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yes.
Well, first of all, I think it's clearer that if it's by right with guidelines compared to a special site plan with special permit, there's a clear difference there. And it's been my experience, and I believe my understanding of the guidance the town council has given us relative to appeals and the strength and authority of the board, that a special permit is the strongest.
Oh, sure.
So I think, I guess for the sake of, again, probably discuss this with the whole planning board, if people are deferring it to us, and get town council involved, because as Judy says, this can be done either way, with the design guidelines or through the special permit. So, and I'm fine with either way, as long as town council, well, I guess I'll defer to saying that if town council feels that the special permit process is the way we've been going for the last 25 years, and it's still in the courts, the strongest for the town, and therefore the strongest for the neighbors, then I would again lean toward the special permit. Now, on the guidelines, and as you said earlier, the proposal is to say that the planning board may draft or may create design guidelines. I think we've had this situation before with something similar, where at the town meeting, the people are saying, well, you're asking me to approve this change in the zoning code without knowing what those design guidelines will be in this case. So we would have to, I think, in order to get something like this passed, we would have to have those design guidelines created so that the people would have a comfort level with the whole piece, with not just part of it. So that I think would have to be done in addition to just saying that we have the authority to do that. And then I have a question. If we go with the design guidelines and an existing facility, an existing building within the district wanted to put on an addition or make some modifications, and those were inconsistent with the new design guidelines. For example, the design guidelines say that the facade, that the building sides shall either be wooden clapboards or brick. And the existing owner of the existing building wanted to change the appearance of the building and put on vinyl siding, which I guess is cheaper. Would the board deny that and say, no, you have to comply with either the wooden siding, wooden clapboards, or brick? And if that's the case, then if I'm the owner of that building, I'm saying, well, you're imposing an additional tax on me that is unfair. Vinyl siding is allowed everywhere else in town, and yet now you've imposed these design guidelines on me. It's going to cost me more money. So where do we stand with that? How would the design guidelines be applied to existing buildings that were to be modified or upgraded?
First of all, you never deny a site plan. You can deny a special permit. You only deny a site plan if someone has failed to give you the information needed to act on it. So what you would do is if your design guidelines had reasonable regulations, and I emphasize reasonable, around exterior materials on a building, and someone said they want to do something else, you would approve the site plan subject to a condition of compliance with the design guidelines. You don't deny it, you impose a condition on the approval.
Right, I never said that we would deny it, but that condition represents an additional expense to the existing property owner.
John,
And
so does a special permit process.
Right, but how, I mean, if I'm that owner, I would appeal that condition.
So you don't think you have the ability to impose that? I mean, how is that any different with a special permit? You're making me do something that you don't make somebody else do down the street. The special permit versus a site plan is irrelevant. You're still making me do something that somebody else doesn't have to do.
Well, the special
If it's
permit.
a tax, it's a tax, no matter what, no matter what vehicle you impose it on me.
Well, with the design guidelines, as you said, they're more they're more definitive. Whereas with the special permit, the board has the authority to go with the desire of the neighbors and the other business people. So I'm just asking, to what extent do the design guidelines can they be defended?
Well, I think you'd have to maybe talk to some other towns. I mean, I'm not going to be able to satisfy you with this. This is done in so many communities, and I know there's a difference of opinion in Southborough, and I'm not going there. I'm simply making a recommendation that you can have uses that are allowed as of right, regulated through a site plan review process that is not a special permit, and the board can impose reasonable conditions on that site plan approval. That's all I'm going to say. And if the town is not comfortable with that, then just take that section out and keep your special permit for site plan review in the business village district. You have just basically undone everything else that's been done in this zoning.
All right, so I think at this point, I am going to, again, I knew that there was going to be points that we were going to have disagreements on, and fortunately we made it to, number 5 before we got there. So I'm going to turn to Ms. Houlihan and then Ms. Luttrell, and then we'll move forward from there. So Ms. Houlihan.
So I actually support section 174-10-1, the Village Business District Plan Review. Marika shared the draft guidelines, and I think if we have an opportunity to provide input on those, I think, you know, I'd be in a good place. So I support that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Luttrell. You're muted, Mimi. There you go.
Yeah, I was hoping you wouldn't notice. Yeah, so I think this is something the planning board needs to discuss, but I'm pretty comfortable with the design guidelines and allowing the flexibility of by right.
Okay, thank you, Mimi. So I think at this point, Judy, I mean, the goal of tonight was some form of consensus. And I'll go back to the Board of Selectmen on this, because ultimately, when we reached a point that there was potentially an issue, it was going to fall to us as it's a Board of Selectmen article. So I'm just going to go around quickly. And I think the real question is, are we looking at guidelines versus the special permit? Does that sum it up, Judy? Basically what you're looking for direction on at this point?
It's the difference between site plan review with design guidelines and a discretionary special permit.
Yes. So I will start with Mr. Healy, just so Judy has some guidance. We can move forward on this. There'll be planning board hearings. I personally don't know that this is something that I want to hold this up on. I mean, I know not all members of planning board have discussed this. I mean, we could certainly punt this piece, but it will hold up the final document. We could ask planning board, the way I look at it as options is we could ask planning board to put it on their next agenda and come back with a consensus of what planning board wants, or we just kind of make a decision today of something to put in a document to go forward with the hearings. So, Mr. Healy, I will start with you.
All right, if I'm voting today, I say design guidelines. I can't imagine that is not the predominant wave, if not overwhelming wave, in communities in Massachusetts. I mean, so much of what we've talked about is getting things built. And I think it's much more likelihood that you have a much stronger likelihood that you are going to entice development if there's more certainty in what the town is going to allow or not allow. And so I agree with, I think the sentiments expressed by Ms. Houlihan and Ms. Luttrell that makes sense for the route to take.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Malinowski.
Yes, I agree with Marty as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shea?
I agree with that as well, but would be very interested to hear how the planning board discusses this. Everything that comes out from all the planning board members, I'd like to hear from everybody on that. You know, you had said a little bit ago that ultimately this is likely going to be a Board of Selectmen sponsored article. But one of the things that we had talked about all along was consensus. And, you know, at the end of the day, hopefully we can come to consensus and agreement with the planning board on this issue as well. So it doesn't, you know, be a holdup at the town meeting where this is presented.
Agreed. Thank you, Mr. Shea. Mr. Stivers.
I agree. I would also be very interested in hearing what the other planning board members have to say about this, but if I had to vote today, I would be in favor of the design guidelines. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Judy, I'm on that same path, but I mean, obviously I think it's important to hear, you know, what planning board says. But I think for the steps of moving forward, I think we've given you the direction that you were looking for tentatively at this point.
So if I incorporate the feedback from tonight into a revised document that leaves for now, 174.10.1 in.
Yep.
And then if the planning board and you guys decide to take it out, you just take it out. And then 1074, 174.10 applies.
Okay. That seems
I
to
think
be,
that's the most elegant way to deal with this.
okay.
Lisa, you see Mr. McKay has his hand up. I don't know if he has a comment on this one.
I did not see that he had his hand up. If we could bring Mr. McKay over. Thank you, Sam. Too many places to look.
Hi, thank you very much for calling on me. I appreciate it. I just wanted to lend a voice of support in favor of a process that allowed some by right uses with site plan review and design guidelines. To me, this goes to the whole sort of heart of the effort and what folks are trying to accomplish with the downtown. If you make it all, and I heard the comment somewhere along the way about, wanting to make sure what's best for the town, which I totally agree with, but adding some predictability to the process, and allowing some uses, which encourages the kinds of projects that we want, allowing those uses by right, and then building in a site plan review with design guidelines component, I think actually adds more protection for the town and by that, what I mean is more protection for the town overall than just making it a non-by right use, a site plan, a special permit use. Because when it's just a special permit, you don't have the benefit of the design guidelines that really guide the planning board. And it can work outstanding when you have a good planning board. But if you're in a place where, you've had turnover in the board, you don't have experienced board members and things like that, and these things change over time, right? I mean, we have elections all the time. And when you have a great planning board, it works fine. When you don't have a great planning board, and I've seen this in other communities, it doesn't give the whole community the kind of protection that it wants. So I love the idea of having site plan review with some tight and good design guidelines that really lay out for applicants who come before the planning board and before the town on projects to know exactly what it is that we expect of them. So okay. I'm delighted to see that you folks are kind of swimming in that direction.
All right. Thank you, Mr. McKay. I appreciate it. So the last two items I had, we may have some level of addressed. So I know 6 was sidewalks and walkability. So I know, Julie, that you had wanted this one on there. Judy, do you want to add anything or comment on sidewalks and walkability? Or do you think we've really gone very broad discussions tonight? So Judy, if you,
I don't have any more to add about that. They're small projects.
Okay, so Julie, I'll go to you because you specifically asked for this to be included.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, no, it's a comment that came up, and much like the conversation around green space, I think it's going to kind of get us in a similar direction. Obviously part of our vision for downtown was having walkability, was having, connectivity to other areas, and many people rightly commented that effort's undermined because there aren't a lot of sidewalks outside of Main Street. Some of our problem will be solved by the current work that's going on, which is going to extend sidewalks eventually much further down Main Street. So I think, that's part of the problem, but not all of it. And I think there's also plans that sidewalks going to turn down Newton Street as well. I don't know if this is, a developer issue or if this is a town issue, or how we can, again, without overburdening and pigeonholing the requirements, to make it so that developers, it's not feasible for somebody to take on a project, how we encourage this sort of investment in sort of an infrastructural piece that kind of creates that sense of community that we want the downtown to be. Is there a way that, certain projects, if it's over a certain size or threshold or something, can be asked to contribute, or something like that.
Judy, do you want to respond to that?
I just think about bylaws I've worked on where you have that kind of provision. And first of all, you can't require somebody to make a financial contribution. You have to give them the option to provide the infrastructure or pay a fee in lieu. Does this get at what you're asking?
Yeah, I think that's what I was thinking.
But I
about.
mean, you're still gonna have to set a threshold for how big a project has to comply with that. Because you're surely not gonna impose that requirement on some 3,000 square foot building. It's not gonna happen. So, you could have something like that, but you gotta think about what's realistic for someone to do. I mean, I wouldn't dream of putting a sidewalk requirement on some building that's, God.
Okay.
Less than
So
10,000 square feet at least.
less than how much?
10,000 square feet at least. That's a lot. Infrastructure is expensive.
Mhm. So is it something, and I think maybe it's a point of discussion, is it something that's worth trying to include with some reasonable threshold? Or is this a separate issue that I don't know? I remember that a few years back, there was a sidewalk committee. I don't know whatever happened with that. Maybe this is just a separate issue that we need to deal with, or maybe, there's, and like we said, we can debate back and forth about what the proper threshold for putting in some sort of requirement for either installing sidewalks or paying some sort of fee to a developer is it 8,000 square feet or whatever that number is, but also realizing that we can expend a lot of energy trying to come up with that number, but there are only so many parcels that are actually available for potential development. So we could expend a lot of energy trying to figure out something that's really just theoretical, like we were talking about with the housing, with the affordable housing piece. So I think maybe that's just a point of discussion. I just want to address it because a lot of people brought it up, and it's something that is part of our important. So
yeah.
So I think on this point, instead of going round table and maybe if there's anybody that just wants to add an additional comment on this piece, because I don't know what we're necessarily asking of Judy at this point. So I can just quickly go by, I'll go by the names on my screen, and you can unmute if you'd like to add something like Mr. Shea just did. So Mr. Shea.
Yeah. I guess my perspective, I really would be hesitant to put sidewalks in this document. And I really think, if sidewalks are going to be built, they're going to be in the public right of way. I think it's incumbent upon the municipality to build that infrastructure system. And identify where the priorities are to build the sidewalks, and it's incumbent upon the town to do it. So,
thank you. Mr. Stivers, I see you're unmuted.
Yes, a quick comment. I mean, it seems to me design guidelines is a good place for this in terms of encouraging people to not only allow for it, but within a parcel, if one can build walkways or whatever to connect appropriate things, whether it's trail network or other parcels or parking or whatever, I think people ought to be encouraged to do that, but otherwise I think it's hard to require. So that's where I'd put it.
Thank you. I'll just go quick. Ms. Malinowski, you can do a yes or nope. Okay, Mr. Haley, nope. Anyone from planning board, Mr. Morris, Ms. Houlihan, or Ms. Luttrell, do you have a comment on this, or we can certainly move on? Okay, I see no comments there. Ms. Duca, do you have a comment? I see no one mute there as well. Okay, so I guess Judy, there's direction on that for you at this point. It's something we'll explore outside. I also agree with what Mr. Shea said. So the seventh and last piece of phase one, and again, I think we may have addressed this, Judy, is the by right. And I know, Julie, this was the one of the other points that you had brought up as well. So maybe I'll go to you first, and then Judy can respond to the point that you were going with on this, because I think we somewhat talked about by right. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think this definitely ties in with the discussion that we already had, but it's a point that came up, as to what the by right use is versus having to go, get approval. What requires a special permit versus what just goes through the regular site plan approval. And, I think that was probably one of the more significant changes of this is that, we have a list of by right uses that don't require that extra threshold.
Yeah, I mean, there's a set of uses that would be permitted as of right. Then there's a set of uses that are permitted as a right subject to size caps on the individual use. So again, just to make sure everybody understands, the 3,000 square feet is a cap on a retail store, not the entire building within which the store is located. So there's uses as of right, there's uses that are as of right, sort of conditional, if you will, have to meet that size cap requirement. And then there are uses that are allowed by special permit from the planning board, which includes any of those uses that are subject to the individual establishment size cap. The planning board can consider lifting that by special permit. And some other uses that it would be subject to a special permit, a microbrewery, a kennel and so forth. And I think I kept the uses by special permit from the ZBA the same as they are now. I was trying actually not to disturb what you have now, just to minimize the possibility of making somebody non-conforming when that really wasn't the point. I mean, there's enough dimensional issues here as it is, but as of a use, I just didn't see the point making them non-conforming. So I tried to keep the ZBA uses pretty much, I think, as they are now. And then focus on development standards. I mean, the planner in me says I'd rather not even have use regulations and just focus on the form of the buildings, but that doesn't fly in small towns, and I understand that. So.
Okay, Julie, did you have any?
I'm sorry, I'm just going to say you have dimensional regulations in this bylaw that you don't have in your other districts right now, but I think that's appropriate because it's a downtown.
Okay, thank you. Did you have anything to add to that, Julie?
No, not right now. Thank you.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just, again, just see if there's any comments based on what Judy said. So I'll just kind of go around again the screen as I see. So Mr. Shea, I don't know if you have anything to comment or add to that. Nope. Okay, Ms. Malinowski, Mr. Stivers, Mr. Healy. I can't see planning board, so anyone from planning board, Mr. Morris, Ms. Houlihan, or Ms. Luttrell, please unmute. And if you have anything to add to what Judy or Julie said. And I see no unmutes. Ms. Duca, same for you. And lastly, Mr. McKay. All right. So, Mr. McKay unmuted.
Oh. No, only to say I don't have anything to add.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right.
Thanks,
so, Judy, is there anything that I missed that you needed direction on that we haven't given you tonight before we move on?
No, I think I'm all set.
Okay. So, I think the next step would be to go through some of the comments such as like mixed use. I know there was a lot of different comments on that. And maybe Judy, you could give us, based on the comments and the feedback, because you responded to everybody, maybe you could give us an idea based on the comments of where you think the direction should go on the definition to see if we can reach some form of consensus.
Well, I don't think the definition needs anything, but if somebody does, then tell me what it is that you want.
Okay, so there were.
It's pretty standard definition.
Okay, so what I think we'll do, I think the easiest thing to do is if we could do a share screen, I'll bring up the matrix that was done that shows on the specific changes that were made. So Katie, if I could have the ability to share screen, and then I think Judy, then all the comments will be there and you'll see where people were going and how we can fit that in. I just, if that makes sense to everybody, because there were a couple other things on there, obviously general comments and whatnot, I think you've responded to, and that's the third phase. If there's something that we're going to touch on that somebody may want additional information from you on. So, Katie, do I have the ability to share screen? Oh, I can.
Yes, you do. Yep, it should be right on the bottom.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Let's see if I did this right, and I did. Wow. Okay, so let me go back up to, just so everybody can see the comments that were made under definitions, down through Mr. Stivers here. These were all comments that were given on the definition. So Judy, I think the easiest thing to do is, based on these comments and the definition that you have brought forward, is your recommendation to take potentially, I guess I'm asking, do you think we should change the definition based on these comments? And then we'll go around, and if there's somebody that specifically wants to speak to, the comment, and whether Judy has answered your question. I think some of these questions may have been answered within the document that Judy has already provided.
So, I mean, I think it's fine to add, where is it? Up residential units or office space on the upper levels, if you want that added. Because right now, the way it says is it's residential uses above the ground floor, because that's really what a mixed-use building is. But if you want to make it clear that somebody can have multiple non-residential uses, I mean, I can change that. I wouldn't put in stuff about restaurants, retail, or other commercial businesses, because really, if you look at the allowed uses as of right, that's what somebody can do that's on the non-residential side in these buildings. They can't, anything else they want to do is going to take a special permit. So I don't think there's anything in the residential, the permitted use section that wouldn't be compatible with upper story residential. I mean, if you want to say, how do I write this?
Judy, would it be easier if I just went, I'm just trying to think of the easiest way for you to do this. Would it be easier?
Right, I'm just going through it now. I mean, I could certainly say residential or office space on the second floor. I just don't think you need to get specific about restaurants, retail, or other commercial businesses, because the only thing they can do on the non-residential side is what's permitted without a special permit from the planning board. So the permitted uses are all compatible. I encourage communities not to use definitions to set regulations. The definition is multiple uses in a single structure with residential uses limited to the upper floor, if we're talking about vertical mixed use.
So
not okay. I mean, I don't know what to say. This is a pretty standard definition of mixed use.
Okay, so I know that you had answered these questions within the matrix document. So why don't, Ms. Houlihan, let's go with you based on what Judy said. If you want to, I don't know if she answered your questions.
Yeah, no, I think it's fine. I think as I'm learning from other things with obtuse or very kind of non-specific definitions, there can be in different ways of interpretation. And I think we're seeing that with some of the lighting issues in our bylaw. So I was just trying to be a little bit more defined. I'm fine with whatever. I'm not an expert. I defer to Judy. Judy's done a great job, and I'm just going to say, go for it. Whatever you think, Judy, I'm going to support.
So, Marnie, I think what would make more sense than putting it in the definition would be in the use regulations where mixed use development is listed. That might be the place to say, with ground floor uses limited to permitted uses under Section A, or something like that, so that it's very clear what the non-residential uses are. I'm just saying I'd put it in the regulatory section of the bylaw and not the definition.
That's fine.
All.
Yeah, I'm totally supportive of that.
Okay, Mr. Stivers, I know you had a big comment on this.
Right. Yeah, I particularly per the earlier comments this evening from Shopsy, I think it's important that we allow for residential use on the ground floor, like the accessibility and so forth. And I don't much care whether it's in the definition or elsewhere, but I think it ought to be clear that there is a possibility of residential on the first floor.
And in that case, Sam, you would need to change the definition.
Yeah, so I think that's useful. I would propose we do that. But,
yeah.
So Judy, is that something that you would recommend?
Yeah, I think that's fine. It's going to bump right up against this conversation about 10%. But I think it's fine to have residential on the ground floor as long as you're not taking up the front facade for
Right.
residential entrances. I think it's fine.
Yep.
Okay. So,
Lisa,
Julie,
if I'm sorry, if I can,
Nope,
just for
go
some
ahead.
clarification.
Sure.
So does that mean, is that then contemplating mixed use where there would be residential on the bottom and retail on the top?
No. That the idea is that you could have residential space on the ground floor, not facing the street. It's not limiting the residential to upper stories. That's what's being asked.
But not putting retail above. Still can't put retail on the upper floor.
Right, no, no one's going to do
I'm
that.
just curious
anyway.
how that's mixed use.
Because you still have a mix of commercial and residential space.
Where's the commercial?
It's going to go in the front of the building facing
Ground floor.
Oh, I see.
belongs.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So Judy, your recommendation is with the changes that we just discussed?
I'm just writing notes.
No,
Yeah.
you're fine. So what I'll do is I'll just quickly go around to everybody again. Now I don't have your pictures on my screen, so I'm just going to go by my list that I have. And if I miss you, please speak up. So again, just for consistency on moving forward and creating a document, I would hate something to be held up because somebody disagreed with the definition or wasn't at least somewhat on board with the definition. So I will start with Mr. Morris. Do you have anything to add regarding this specific definition of mixed use?
Sam, are you sitting down? I agree.
Yes, solidly.
I agree with you.
I got 2 in one night. I can't.
Oh,
believe
Sam, I'm telling you.
it is incredible. I think I'll
right.
retire.
No, I think the current definition excludes residential on the first floor, and all we're doing is allowing it to be included on the first floor.
Right.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Houlihan.
Thank you.
Sorry, I have no further comments. I'm fine with Sam's recommendation and changing that language and
Okay,
definition.
thank you. Ms. Luttrell?
My only question is if we're trying to promote commercial development, why is it only 10%?
So best practices in mixed use zoning is not to set any percent, and rather to say where in the building does the commercial space need to be, so that you accomplish the objectives of activating the street, making the ground floor entrance at the street level something that people will come into, no matter what percentage of the building it is. That's actually best practices. And it becomes an issue for a couple of reasons. One, if you want to have housing also on the first floor, accessible from the side or rear, that's going to need to be accommodated too within this floor space. If a developer, I'm not saying this would necessarily happen in Southborough, but what sometimes happens with a mixed use building is that to meet the parking requirement, the developer will sometimes put parking under the building, not subgrade, not underground, but under the building, so that the front is commercial, and back of the commercial is a parking area, and the second and third floors are above the parking. If you can picture what I'm talking about. So you never want to say 30%, 50%. What you just don't want to do that. The point is, what is the commercial space doing for your downtown? Not so much how much of an individual building is commercial. So best practices is no percentage at all. I did it because I figured people were probably going to want that comfort level, but it's actually generally frowned upon.
Okay.
So Mimi,
fine.
are you suggesting that we take the 10% out?
No, I think
I was just asking for the reasoning behind it from Judy. That's all. I just didn't understand. So I would be fine, keeping that and allowing for residents on the first floor.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Mimi. Ms. Conley.
I have nothing additional to add. I agree. For accessibility reasons, I like having the change in the definition.
Thank you. Ms. Duca?
I agree with Sam's changes. I'm good.
Okay. Mr. Healy?
I'm fine with the change. I guess I'm inclined to go with the, I'd be inclined to go with the best practice and take out the percentage. But I'm not going to hold anything up about that.
Okay. Mr. Shea?
No additional comments.
Okay. Mr. Stivers? Obviously, I don't think you do, but I'll ask.
Yeah, again, I'm ambivalent about the 10%, but I'm happy with it there, and I'd be happy taking it out too. No problem. Thanks.
Okay. And I am also fine with that. I don't think I missed anybody. If I did, please speak up.
It's Chelsea. I'm good with it.
Oh, sorry, Chelsea. Oh my gosh, I skipped right over you. Sorry about that. Okay, so Judy, I think we're fine with that. I think to expedite things going forward, because like for instance, on the bed and breakfast definition, only 2 people had commented on that. I think, Judy, I'll have you address it, and then just anybody that has a difference of opinion on that, we'll have step forward instead of going around the room and everybody agreeing to the same thing. It just seems to move things along faster. Does that make sense, Judy?
Sure.
Okay. So the next would be the update, the bed and breakfast definition. And Ms. Houlihan, are you fine with the response that you got from Judy on that? Or Judy, do you even want to speak to that?
I don't mind changing it to property from, well, let's see.
I think I said owner occupied residence. I think that was the only difference. So the difference is that the person lives there, is what my recollection was.
Right. Owner occupied residence, providing breakfast for guests. Consider broader definition, small lodging establishment that offers overnight accommodations and breakfast. So you're saying it wouldn't have to be owner occupied?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometime that was kind of my pull, is maybe being able to expand that the owner could occupy a different residence and come in and provide that. So I think that's a question for this broader team discussion.
Judy, your thoughts on that?
Well, there's nothing wrong with the change that's being suggested here. Typically, bed and breakfast is an owner occupied property. Sometimes the owner lives in a separate structure on the same property. Once you talk about someone who's living off site and coming in to care for it, it kind of becomes a small inn. I don't care. I have no problem with this change. I'm just telling you why I wrote it the way I did.
Okay. Are there any comments? I guess the easiest way is to just open it up. Any comments, or does anyone have a strong sense that it should be owner occupied?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Mimi.
I think it should be owner occupied.
Okay.
I agree with Judy. If it's not a bed and breakfast anymore, it becomes an inn if there's no ownership there.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Stivers, I see you're unmuted.
I lean in that direction as well. I think owner occupied to me feels better.
Okay, so is there anyone, I guess the easiest way is there anyone that prefers it not be owner occupied? Okay, Judy, I think you have your majority consensus on that.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, Sam, you also had comments on that. I apologize. You're on the next page.
Mm-hmm.
So are you good with? Actually, Judy, did you incorporate some of these comments in the definition?
I don't remember right now.
Yeah, I'm just looking quickly. It currently does not. Currently, it just says bed and breakfast is an establishment on an owner occupied property providing not more than 4 guest rooms for overnight lodging with food service limited to breakfast for guests.
See, the only reason I don't add things like that, it has to comply with all these other requirements, is it has to comply with them anyway. So I'm not sure what it does for the zoning to say that.
Yeah, and I don't feel strongly about that one, but I do
Okay.
feel more strongly about the, 10 nights and so forth. And
Sure, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay. Does anyone have an objection to that?
It's Marnie, Lisa.
Go ahead, Marnie. Yep.
I do. I don't understand why you'd have to limit if it's a bed and breakfast, and let's just say there's some like crazy situation and the kid's in a hospital and the parents, this is their only lodging. I think it's extreme to say 10 consecutive nights. Personally, why
Pam, is your-
restrict it if they're paying their fee?
Is your intent to try to prevent this from becoming apartments? Is that
yeah,
the?
that was my thought. Was I'm not as interested as in having apartments basically that are long-term rental kind of things as opposed to turnover. So if there's a better way to do that, I'm certainly open to it, and I appreciate Marnie's comment. Not quite sure how to find language to meet in the middle on that.
Yeah, I agree with Marnie too. This is Julie, just adding that. I think that's a really valid point.
I mean, sometimes these definitions make reference to things like, guests shall not establish, guest quarters as a permanent residence or something like that. So I can do a little more homework on this if you want me to.
I think that would be great.
Yep, I'd be interested in that. Thanks.
Okay. Microbrewery. Microbrewery defined by not allowed use. Judy, do you have any comments on, or Mimi, did Judy respond to your comments, and are you satisfied with the response, or do you want further discussion?
Yeah, it was just that it was defined, but it wasn't in the allowed uses. So I think that's been changed.
Okay.
Yeah, I mixed up the wording in the last one, the first version. So it is there now as a special permit use.
Okay, and I think I added a definition here that shouldn't be under microbrewery. So, and I think we already dealt with the 10%. So, okay. So does anyone have any other comments for Judy on the microbrewery?
I do.
Okay, who is speaking? Sorry.
Don.
Sorry, Don, go ahead.
I don't go to microbreweries that often at all, but I've talked to people that have, and what they're telling me is that they usually serve their microbrew beers and ales and so on, but they also serve wine that's not necessarily made there. But some people, if they go as couples, the guy, I don't want to stereotype, but the guy usually drinks the beer, and sometimes the lady would like a glass of wine. Are we limiting?
Don.
What's that?
You're stereotyping.
Well, it's just been my experience with talking to people that go there, or seeing that wine is also offered. I don't know if the definition, if that's want to exclude providing a different type of beverage. That's all. Not a big deal. Just I think that's what's out there.
So this is actually a really standard definition of a microbrewery. I don't know how to comment on what you're saying. I just don't. I don't drink in microbreweries either. I'm too old.
I don't think the definition says you can't have other beverages provided. I think it's more specific to the microbrewery itself.
Okay.
I don't know.
I'm worried about opening up Pandora's box.
Okay, I'm with you.
Okay.
Hey, Lisa, wouldn't
yes,
somebody
Sam.
have to have another permit to sell other kind
Correct.
of drinks at a
Yeah.
place like that?
I think so. I think
Yeah,
so.
Controls
above-
itself.
A pub brewery license.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
From the Commonwealth. Yeah. Okay. So any other comments specifically on that? Okay, and it does get easier as we go through. We've addressed a lot of the comments in here already, so it's not as daunting as it may appear. Co-work center, Judy.
Oh, you want a definition? Sure, I can add one. That's fair.
Okay.
I don't know why,
Okay.
I don't know why I didn't include it.
Okay, that was easy. Floor area ratio.
I think you already have a definition of this in your zoning. I think that's why I didn't add it.
Okay, can you just verify that, or
I
Mr.
will.
Morris? I don't know if you could, off the top of your head.
Don, I think there's a definition of gross floor area in your zoning.
I defer to Mrs. Latrell. She was an expert on this in the recent months,
Okay.
studying this. You there, Mimi?
I was just trying to quickly look it up. I'm pretty sure there is a definition.
Yeah, I
in
think
the
maybe
zoning.
that's why I didn't put it in here, because I thought I had checked and it was already there and I didn't want to set up some conflict. So I mean, I don't have your zoning open right now and my brain's getting tired anyway, but I think that I don't think you need it.
I think you're right. I'll double check quickly.
Okay, I mean,
Okay.
if you do, I'll add it, but
Okay, and you added a definition for facade.
yeah.
So does anyone have a problem with the exterior side of a building being the definition of facade?
What it is.
That's what it is. Agreed. But hearing no comments, we'll move on from that.
I just have, sorry, this is
Sure, go ahead.
I have one comment back up on the co-working slightly.
Yep.
The term co-working is sort of, I'm going to call it last year. It's becoming more called flexible space. And so I don't know if that, as we think about moving forward with this and keeping this present, I'm just throwing it out there. That's sort of how the term is being used more now than co-working.
Well, to me, flex space is a much older term. That's really interesting.
So it's the use of the space, not the space type, if that makes sense.
Right, yeah, I know.
Yeah. It's taken me a while to adjust to it, but that's become the sort of a little bit more of the industry standards to be calling it flexible space.
Maybe we include both in the definition.
Yeah, I'm just thinking as we move forward, so it doesn't get, sort of already written out of date.
Yeah. I just took a quick look at our current zoning code. Co-work is not in there.
Yeah, no, it needs a definition, Sam. You're absolutely right.
Okay. Okay. So can we add flexible, what was it, Suzanne? Flexible?
Flexible. We could add co-work
flexible.
space and then means flexible space such as blah, 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 or something like that.
perfect.
To have both words in there.
Okay. It's Marnie, Lisa. Just
Yes,
a
go ahead.
comment, like flexible is also really defined for one company. So flexible managed space. So I'm interested in Suzanne's perspective because I've seen it only used for one company as they manage their own office space versus co-working spaces, which is really multiple companies and then for like multiple collaborative spaces.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of a world that's still evolving and really changing right now. So I think it's hard to, I would agree, I don't disagree with you. But I think it's a term that you're hearing more and more thrown out there. And so I'm not sure there's actual, real definitions.
And Suzanne, we actually
Definitions.
recently had a case on Route 9 where someone bought a building and they converted it into flexible space, co-work space. I heard both those terms used to describe that particular space, as a matter of fact. So
Yeah, it's more just kind of an industry term, I would say. And so I think it just gives you flexibility.
mm-hmm.
I think they kind of mean the same thing at the end of the day.
I actually think they are different. I think that they are different. Flexible space typically is within a particular, company's space. And it is where it's spaces where a variety of amenities are provided for the employees who work there. You can have maker space, you can have food, you can have individual workstations where people can kind of go and have quiet. It's flexible space for the people who work in that building. Whereas a co-work space is cooperatively occupied by more than one owner.
I think you're right,
They have a
Judy.
different meaning.
I think you're right, but I think people tend to be not very careful about how they use it
Yes.
in making that distinction, so it
Mhm.
gets blurred.
So
Well,
is our,
I'll add a definition. I'll just leave it at that. I'll add a definition for it.
Yep. Yep.
okay. Okay. We talked about floor area ratio definitions, definition of facade. Let's see, I think we answered some of these already. Part 2, 1743, Judy. Oh, yeah, we were just gonna change it, make it consistent.
Yeah.
The consistency, that's all set. 1748 dash 8C2. This was from single permitted use to define.
Some of these are old comments I already responded to.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, unless, Julie, is there anything that Judy has already responded to from EDC standpoint? Because there's 3 comments right here for them.
I hear you. I'm just looking real quick.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think that we've addressed these, but I
Yeah,
just
I
want to be
think-
sure.
I think so too.
Okay, I can go back up, sorry.
Yeah, I think we're okay.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
We talked about by right. So if we move on to the next, we already discussed the permitted uses with the maximum floor ratio. We discussed that already. Mixed use development. We've already discussed that as well. The number, suggested number of units in a mixed use development not to exceed 4. Judy, did we address that?
We're all set on that, Lisa.
Yeah, we've
Okay,
addressed
we're all
that.
set. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be sure. And again, Judy, I think you've already addressed some of these in the document itself.
I think so too.
Yeah, I think so too.
I went
So,
through.
Yep,
I mean, I think people would have to go back and look at my response to the comments.
yeah. Okay. Permitted use is up to a maximum of 3,000 square feet per establishment.
Yeah,
Oh, what,
separate the size of the establishment from the size of the building. 2 different issues.
Okay, Mimi, do you have any comment on this before we move on?
No, I'm good. They've all been answered.
Okay, Sam as well? I just want to verify.
Yeah, I actually don't remember if my suggestion is added or not, but I'll
Which
follow.
one, Sam?
I believe it
Indoor,
is, Sam.
indoor recreation, athletic, or exercise facility.
I'm looking as well, Judy.
Yeah, it's there.
Yeah,
Good,
I
Under
thought
special
so.
permit uses from the planning board. Yeah.
Okay. So I would assume on these, Judy, where Sam had just made a comment, those will replace. I'm looking at the, number 2. Ice cream. Sorry, this is very ineffective the way I'm doing this, but. Ice
I
cream
was just trying
sandwich
to
shop and
expand the
food.
uses a little bit here, again, to make it more attractive for people to develop.
Okay, I guess the easiest thing to do is to ask if anyone has a concern with adding retail sales, including convenience store or food mart versus candy shop. Is there a reason, Judy, why we defined sandwich shop, candy shop?
It's the size of the establishment. What's a food mart?
Bodega, small place.
But why isn't that covered under retail?
Yeah, it could be. I just wanted to be clear that that was allowed. That was my only point to clarify. But if that's broad enough, that's not a big deal for
Yeah, I'm not specifying the kind of retail sales here. It's just retail sales.
me. Okay.
Okay. Sam, your next comment, barbershop? Shoe repair?
Again, trying to broaden the
Mm-hmm.
definitions.
Okay, and you're fine, Judy? Subsection B, permitted uses by special permit. Exceeds the maximum floor ratio of under exceeding 2,000 square feet. You adjusted that to 3,000?
For an individual establishment, yes.
Yes, okay. Special permit should be 3,000, okay. And then Sam, you did 0.45,000.
We already talked about it. Yeah.
We already did. That's what I thought. Okay. And I don't think anybody, there was consistency on veterinary dog kennel, medical or dental office.
It's under special permit uses for the planning board.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not clear to me why there's a bias against that. I mean, I don't see why
There
we
isn't.
don't allow medical dental by right.
Different impact, that's all.
Impact,
So
how?
Traffic, parking.
Mm.
That's all. That's the only reason for it. I mean, I don't care one way or the other, but I'm telling you why it's
Yeah.
there.
I mean, I guess I would allow it, but it's one voice. So,
you would allow it by right, Sam?
yeah.
Okay. So where this is under a special permit, I guess we'll go around and we'll just see if everybody agrees. That should be moved up by right. So, Mr. Morris?
Either way.
Okay.
Either way, although there is a difference between a hospital, a clinic, and a medical office. So
right,
an office and a clinic would be daytime and closed at night, whereas a hospital is 24/7.
Right. And I'm thinking doctor's office, basically, business hours.
Maybe we clarify that. Okay, thank you. Ms. Houlihan?
Yeah, I'm fine if it's by right. They still have to oblige to all the parking and all the other restrictions, so it doesn't really matter to me.
Okay, Ms. Luttrell?
I would go with Judy's expert advice on this one.
Okay. Ms. Conley?
Yeah, I agree with Judy. I would go with her.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Duca?
I'd go with Judy. I'm good.
Mr. Healy?
Yeah, I defer to Judy as well. I worry about changing one. In other words, there seems to be, a scheme to why she put things in one place and the other, and they've all made sense to me. So I'd go with her.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Malinowski?
I'd go with Judy.
Mr. Shea?
I'm going with Judy as well.
Okay, Mr. Stivers?
I'm outvoted.
You're outvoted. I thought I'd ask Sam, and I also agree with Judy. Is there anyone I missed that I don't have on my list? Okay. All right, Judy. So we addressed mixed use. That's all set. This private garage, remove no parking structure.
It seemed to me like creating parking structures down here was not very desirable use of the space.
Actually, Judy had made that change
Already
already.
made these changes are made.
These
Okay.
changes are made, yep. And Sam, the indoor recreation, she's done that. Judy, the yoga studio, personal fitness.
So the problem I'm worried about is somebody's going to go to the building inspector and say, what's the difference between a personal fitness facility and indoor recreation or athletic or exercise facility?
Julie, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, it's a good point. I don't have an answer to it.
So would you be fine?
Yeah. I mean, I think from my opinion and from hearing what everyone else had to say, all of those things seem to fit into the scheme of things that we'd be okay with. So,
yeah,
you know, why split hairs over it?
Okay. All right. You good with that, Judy?
Yeah.
Okay. So special permit from the ZBA travel trailer. That's come up multiple times.
That's been addressed.
Yep, that was addressed.
Yep, I see it. Yep. Yep. You addressed, I know you responded to the building inspector already. Development standards. Minimum lot size, great conforming. Lowering the minimum. I don't believe we discussed the minimum lot size, Judy. Did I miss that?
Did anybody comment on it?
Yeah, so Ms. Houlihan, Marnie, do you want to?
Yeah, I think when I looked up town code, I thought it said 10,000. So I was a little curious as to why we were lowering the minimum square feet to 5,000. But I
For this
could be
district.
wrong.
For this district. You should, because you have lot sizes all over the place in this district right now. So if you take this down to 5,000 square feet, you actually bring some lots into conformance.
Yeah, so then I'm fine with that.
Okay, Julie, do you want to, you had a question on this? Was your question addressed?
Yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm good.
Okay. Okay. Minimum frontage. I think Judy, you addressed that one as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, minimum setbacks. Add language. Was this? Setbacks. Front 5 feet. Judy, did you address this one? Sorry, I don't.
Which one?
Under minimum setbacks. Minimum facade. You left it at 10, 35, 10.
The front minimum is 10, the maximum front is 20.
Okay.
You don't have a maximum setback right now. We're suggesting that you have one. So that you don't end up with somebody, you know, building something someday that's pushed way back from the street. This is part of what keeps the parking out away from the front of the building.
Okay, so Julie, are you fine with what Judy has written?
Yeah, I'm fine with Judy.
I'd be happy to say front 0. I just don't know what your fire chief's going to say about it.
Yeah, yeah. Sam?
Yeah, I was trying to reduce the front here and allow for bay windows, balconies, et cetera, et cetera.
We can do that. You mean to allow those, exempt those from the front setback?
Yeah,
Yeah, we can do that. I don't know how anybody else feels about it, but it's actually a good idea. You allow some protrusions from the building to fall within the front setback.
right.
You get some nice design elements that otherwise you might not get.
Yeah, create some variety and interest there, I think. Potentially.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone have an issue with that? Okay.
Does that inhibit any trucks or anything else getting through?
Well, they're still going to have to go through site plan review, and the fire chief's still going to say, you know, yes or no. So I wouldn't be too worried about that.
Okay.
That's my opinion, but.
Okay.
Anyone else?
So Sam, usually when you provide for that, you know, protrusions from the front of the building, there's still a limit of like 2 feet or 3 feet or something.
Yeah, okay, I'm fine with that. I don't, whatever is practical there. So.
Sure, okay.
Okay, Julie, on the 35 feet, you asked if it should be reduced to 10. Do you have a comment on that? Or are you fine with it at potentially leaving it at 35?
I think I'm trying to remember what I know we talked about this as a committee. And I think we're just wondering if it was necessary, why would we want to put that on there?
I think that may be your existing standard. I'm looking now. I don't remember.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, no, I think you're right.
Okay.
But is it worth it? I'm just trying to think, like, why is that necessary? I mean, I think, I know we've got like some split lots, and obviously that would be an issue on those potentially, but other than that, I don't see why we want to limit it.
Because you have residences behind some of these properties. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, your rear setback right now is 35.
Okay.
So are you good, Julie, with?
Yeah, and I think, with the sizes of the buildings, the FAR that we're talking about anyway, it probably wouldn't be an issue anyway.
Okay. Mimi, on the facade build out, was your question answered?
Yes, it was. Thank you.
Okay. Height restrictions, we went through that already. Minimum ground floor height. Marnie, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I think my comment was really just around if we impose that and we have existing, it's kind of Dawn's point earlier, like if there's someone who has a building and they want to renovate, do they have to now meet these requirements? So is there something that we can potentially write in that is a grandfather law?
No.
That was really my only concern.
It gets handled by the Board of Appeals. If somebody wants to, if they want to do something that conforms, they don't need to go to the ZBA. But if they're doing something that's an alteration that doesn't conform, they can go to the Board of Appeals, basically and request relief. Because they're non-conforming. They have vested rights in what they have now.
Got it. Okay. I'm okay with that process if the other planning board members support that too.
Okay. Donnie, Mimi?
No, I agree with Judy.
Okay. Mimi?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much. Maximum ground floor height, 18 feet. Julie?
Just to get a first floor that's a modern commercial space. First floor on a mixed use building is always taller than the upper floors, or at least it should be. If somebody's doing a renovation of existing structure, that's one thing, but mixed use typically ends up being new construction. And so you want that first floor to have more height. It's just standard in business development.
I totally agree with that.
Okay. All right. Special permit for height increase. We've gone through that. Section 1, 2, on any lot with 10,000 square feet or more, at least 5,154. Judy, your thoughts on that?
Which one?
Sorry, section section L2, 1-2. Building regulations. Sorry. Sam, do you want to?
I actually think I took some of that out.
You did. Okay. Okay. I was looking for you on ideas how to make this happen. So.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Affordable housing, we've talked about. We'll skip through all of that. Sections 174.10. Mimi, are you fine?
Yep.
Okay. And I'll go to Julie. Design guidelines separate from bylaw. We've already had this discussion. For district plan review. Julie, do you have anything else? Do you think? Subjective guidelines, we talked about that.
Yeah, I think this has mostly been addressed.
Okay. Sorry, I can go back up. Okay. And Judy, you already answered conservation and open space and responded to Dolores as well. Parking and regulations. EDC. Okay, we did that already. I believe the first one. Marnie? Parking remains to be the most significant challenge.
Yeah, I have really no comment. I don't know where we go from there.
Okay.
Parking is going to be a problem. It's a small district. I don't mean to be flip, but I mean, it is just the reality of these small downtowns.
Unless we get parcel 5440.
That's
Mr.
right.
Stivers. That's off topic. And then I think general questions, I'm just going to quickly go through. Mimi, under your general questions, did you have anything further for Judy on those?
No, she addressed them.
Okay, building inspector was addressed, open space was addressed, and then that leads us to the end of this document. So the last thing I will do, is there any questions for Judy? I'll go around quickly. Is there any questions for Judy that we may not have addressed, that you may have a comment on before we move forward with a draft document? Mr. Morse.
No, as usual, Judy, excellent work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Houlihan?
I'm just going to give a shout out to Judy and a woot woot. Let's get this done.
All right, Ms. Luttrell.
Ditto. This was a very productive meeting. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Ms. Conley.
Same. Thank you so much, Judy. Thank you, Lisa. This was, I can't believe we got through this all in this time frame, and this was great. So thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Ms. Duca.
Nope, but a big thank you to Judy. I know this was a tough task.
It was. Mr. Healy.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Judy. Nothing else.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Ms. Malinowski.
Thank you, Lisa and Judy. Great job with this meeting.
Thank you.
Mr. Shea.
Excellent job facilitating the discussion, Lisa. No further comments, questions.
Okay. And I will also thank Julie for an EDC for a lot of the work they put in to get us here. We were on and Judy as well. We were on a conversation. We had a phone call at 5 o'clock today before this meeting. So it's kind of been a long day for us, but I couldn't be happier as to where we've gone and how well everybody has worked together. This was a great collaborative effort. So again, thank you to everybody for this piece. And I will gladly at this time hand the meeting back over to Mr. Healy. Stop sharing my screen. Take a deep breath and a drink of my Mountain Dew now. So,
Do I get a comment, Lisa?
you do. Sorry, Sam. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Yes,
Can we
please.
vote on whether or not Mr. Stivers gets a?
I think you already have.
Sorry, Sam. It was not intentional.
I understand. Quickly, good progress. And I continue to look to Judy for any other suggestions she might have about other towns that are similar to Southborough in terms of geography and desires for this stuff, other lessons that we might keep in mind as we go forward here in terms of ways to promote development from developers that they can actually make money on and get projects done with, that we might consider to add to this language in here someplace, because I think there got to be other examples out there that we can learn from. I think we've done some of that already, but I hope we will keep our eyes open to those opportunities and continue to look for good ideas as we go forward with this. So good progress, but still a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Great, Sam. One last thing before I turn it over to Mr. Healy. Judy, if you have we answered all the questions that you had and given you what you needed to move forward?
I think so.
Okay, wonderful. Again, thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. All right,
Good
Mr.
night,
Healy.
Judy. Yeah, I'm going to go to Mr. Morris first. I'm assuming you guys want to adjourn before we continue, hopefully for a very scant number of minutes.
Am I done at this point, by the way, guys?
You are, Judy. Thank you. Sorry.
No, we're
you.
going to try to make it to Thanksgiving.
That's right.
Bye-bye.
Have a
Bye,
good night.
Judy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marty. There was I'm not sure if you're aware that there was a public hearing notice that Ashland sent to the town planner regarding a parcel of land on Route 135. It's an overlay district thing. We just got it today. So I'll ask the town planner to send it to you, Marty, and maybe you can distribute it as appropriate. It's kind of interesting. It's a small piece, 3 parcel piece on 135, and you can see the public hearing notice. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mrs. Luttrell.
So moved.
Second.
And the motion's been seconded by Mrs. Houlihan. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Morris, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Thank you, Board of Selectmen and others. Wonderful, excellent facilitation, Lisa.
Thank you.
Happy
Outstanding.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Happy
Thank
Thanksgiving.
you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Good night, folks.
Good night.
I'm not sure who's still on from EDC, but I can adjourn our meeting as well.
Here.
Just Suzanne.
Suzanne, how do you vote?
It's
Do you
your
wanna-
vote.
So moved.
Can you second as well?
Okay.
Thanks. Seconded. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you guys
Good
so
night,
much.
Julie.
Guys.
Thank
Good
you
night.
again for everything, Julie.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, item 4, Chairman's report. Nothing that can't wait until December 1st. Members' reports. I see none. Town administrator report.
You're going to make me the bad guy, aren't you? I will be as brief as I can be tonight. There's just a couple of things I want to update the board on. I'll start with the most important one first. The IT manager position. I've had continuing discussions with the superintendent. Again, I think that as we have in the past, this has come down to an issue of timing. You know, the school really doesn't have the capacity right now to assume townwide responsibilities here for IT. They do want to continue to explore synergies with shared services. So, you know, we'll continue to look at these things moving forward. But at this point, we're going to continue with the hiring of the IT manager position on our side. So basically replacing Tom with a new Tom. And that hiring effort is being led by Mrs. Hale. MTC and Personnel Board have been contacted to have roles in the process. And I understand that we will have someone from MTC involved in the review of the resumes, as well as at least the first round of the interviews. We do have right now 19 applicants for the position. 10 of them have municipal experience. So hopefully we'll have a good crop. I was taking a look through today, and I think that there is some value in there. The other piece we've talked about with the school is the bridge period between Tom leaving and the new Tom. The superintendent has offered the services of one of their district technology managers, which they will identify based on availability to help us with this bridge period between November 27th and assuming that we can get somebody at least hired before Christmas and then getting them on board depending on their notice period. The ask from the school is that the town would absorb 1/3 of their Southborough salary during that period. And that really, if you think about it, the IT people are basically paid in thirds. They're paid by Southborough, by Northborough, and by the regional school. So it amounts to about $550 a pay period every 2 weeks. So it's not really a heavy lift for some, I think, some good coverage for us on an IT basis moving forward. So I wanted to just let you know that, see if you had any questions with that. We're going to begin that fairly soon, and we're hoping to begin the interview process and start getting people in sometime within the next week to 10 days. Nope, everybody looks good. I don't see any hands. Second piece, now that the new budget policy changes aren't even cold yet, and I wanted to bring to you the first issue that was raised by the fire chief. We have our radio antennas over at EMC. We have 2 antennas over there that need to be replaced for the public safety radio system. And the cost of that is going to be just over $8,600 to replace 2 antennas. Right now, they have rewired the antennas to use the DPW antenna, which means better service for police, a little bit less quality service for DPW. Karen Galligan is okay with that. They're using mostly the mobile radios, so it's not going to have much of an impact on their services. The chief, we need to get this done in order to support our radio system. So I wanted to make this board aware. I know that between the 2 chiefs, they're going to take a look at budget and see if there's some place where we can try and do something over the course of the remainder of the year. But I am also going to notify advisory that this could potentially be a reserve fund transfer of some amount as we, get closer to the end of the year, in another 6 months or so. So that's a notification piece there. Let's see. Just a quick update on the conversations with Crown Castle and AT&T. If you've been a regular checker of the legal file, the shared file, and I'm as far as I know, no one's having any issues with any of those. Town council continues to talk with the counterparts from AT&T and Crown Castle. It does appear that, we're trying to move to an amenable solution, which helps everyone. AT&T should have been signing this week, I believe, the lease agreement with Pilgrim Church to move their antennas into the steeple. It's a multi-phase process for them to do that. Crown Castle is supposed to have the drawings from the new flagpole and design submitted to the town on or about December 4th. If I have them in time for the meeting, I'll make sure that we bring them to the, I'm sorry. So we're meeting on the 1st. So we'll make sure the board has those as quickly as they can, and then we can make some decisions and authorize Crown Castle to begin the fabrication and the installation of the flagpole. The delivery time for the flagpole is going to be about 2 to 3 weeks after the design is approved by the board. So hopefully we will, I hate to use the word special meeting, but there may be something that we do need to do in between December 1st and December 15th in order to keep this process moving forward. So that's a quick update on that piece. And one last item, the legislators, Representative Dykema and Senator Eldridge, have both indicated that they are available to come meet with the board on December 15th. They have asked if there are any specific topics that the board would like to, have them speak on, if there's information you'd like them to bring. Obviously, I think, grant opportunities, fiscal 21 budget, fiscal 22 budget, but if there are other things that you are looking for, if you could please, send me that information. I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if you want to, work that through one person, or you want to, facilitate just that back to me. And we can take a look at it at the meeting on the 1st and make sure that everyone, is comfortable with the topics. I'll defer to you on that, but that was my last piece.
All right, thanks, Mark. My understanding was that you and Vanessa were going to send out a list, and then we would supplement it. Did I misunderstand that?
No, I can do that. I just wanted to see, I wanted to offer that out to the board, but I will. We do have a draft list. We'll send that out to the board tomorrow. So I will include that as an item on the meeting next week.
Yeah, and if any one or two, hopefully no more than that, additional items that any of us might want to add.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Good.
Thanks, Mark. All right. Consent agenda. A, B, and C. Any holds?
A.
A.
Just A? All right, I move that we approve consent agenda items B and C.
Second.
Discussion none. Ms. Braccio?
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski?
Aye.
Mr. Shea?
Aye.
Mr. Stivers?
Aye.
Mr. Healy is aye. A, held by Mr. Stivers and Ms. Malinowski.
So on the 30th meeting, we also had a consent agenda item B to appoint me to the trust. We just need to add that, unanimous decision.
Okay. All right.
So I don't know, I think it might be easier rather than, we can just say, I don't remember who made the motion. So I assume it was you, Marty. But if we could just get a draft, another draft of those minutes before we approve them.
Yeah, why don't we, instead of approving those tonight, then why don't we check that, Mark, just to make sure we get the movement and seconder, if those are the right terms, correct?
No, I will do that. I will also note those were my minutes. So I don't want any aspersions on Katie. So those are mine, and I have no idea how. We only had a 2-item agenda. So I have no idea how that second item didn't make it on, but I'll take care of that.
Okay.
And then
Sam, you had, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chelsea.
So that was it on those minutes. And then the second set of minutes on the 11:10, page 4, Marty, when you were giving your update on the top of page 4, the first paragraph there on scheduling public forums for input, I think we just need to say that that's related to the commuter rail schedule. Cause I think if you read that, it's not specific on which schedule it is.
Right, I had that too. I would say MassDOT is scheduling public forums input on transit services.
Okay, got it. Okay. Well, since we're going to take a look at these again, Mark, just put these on for the agenda for 12-1.
Marty, I had one more on page 2.
Yep.
Talking about the next hearing for Judy Barrett. It said November 24th at 8 p.m. I thought that was 6:30 p.m.
Okay, I see it. Yeah. Okay.
And that's it for me.
Okay. All right, I'm going to pay very close attention on December 1st to see if somebody holds these minutes.
I've got 3 more. I'm just holding my hands here. So.
All right, so we're not going to vote on those tonight. We'll just put them on for the 12-1 agenda.
Okay.
All right, I don't think there's anyone out there in the public for public comment.
Yeah, there is.
Mr. Donovan has been here for most of the evening.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, Ryan, no.
but his hand isn't up, so let's adjourn quickly.
No, Ryan? I'm sorry, were you here at the very beginning of the meeting? Did we miss you?
No, I have to admit, I've been in and out. I've just been, I have not watched the whole meeting all the way through.
Okay.
You missed the part where we voted on the library to move it to Southville Road.
What's up? And if you want to stay in the good graces of the Board of Selectmen, you will make it brief.
Oh, wait, were you asking for just an update?
No. Did you have a public comment?
No, I do not.
No.
Oh.
Very brief. Good job.
But I'll move to approve his budget.
Great job from the Board of Selectmen. That's my
Ryan, have a nice Thanksgiving. All right, I move to adjourn.
Second.
About 4 seconds.
Discussion none. Ms. Braccio.
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski.
Aye.
Mr. Shea.
Aye.
Mr. Stivers.
Aye.
Mr. Healy is aye. Nice holiday, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.